I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening and call to order the work session for February 1st, 2022. And Dr. Butler, would you do the honors and say the pledge?
So good evening and welcome Lower Moreland Township School District community, and happy Lunar New Year to those celebrating it today. And I'd like to recognize it is also the first day of Black History Month. My name is Dr. Scott Davidheiser, Superintendent of Schools. Thank you for attending this evening's meeting of the Board of School Directors. I'd like to remind our board and members of the public that this meeting is being live streamed on our district YouTube channel, and that a recording of the meeting will be posted on our school board website within 48 hours following this meeting. I would like to welcome our board members and members of the public joining us this evening. To our board members, please be reminded that for sound purposes, you must turn on your microphone by tapping the touchpad and speak directly into it for the sound to be audible not only for our in-person community members here in the auditorium, but also for anyone listening to the live stream. After speaking, please also mute your microphone by once again pressing the touchpad. Ms. Mayfield, would you please take the roll call of the board?
Ms. Baker?
Present.
Mr. Berardi?
Present.
Dr. Butler?
Present.
Ms. Cannon?
Present.
Dr. Cohen?
Present.
Mr. Geiger?
Present.
Dr. Lee?
Present.
Ms. Netter?
Present.
Mr. Steinberg? Dr. Davidheiser, everyone is present.
Thank you. I'll take the roll call of the cabinet members and administrators who are also participating this evening. Mrs. Gaudo?
Present.
Mrs. Drennan?
Present.
Mr. McGuinn?
Here.
Mr. Giordano?
Present.
Dr. Hilt?
Here.
Mr. Miles? Mr. Miles is present. Ms. Dilks? Ms. Dilks is present. Mr. Cole? And Mr. Cole is present as well. Thank you. All right, that takes us down to our presentations for this evening. And our first presentation is our standing presentation for every work session meeting. I'd like to welcome Mr. Jamie Lynch to the microphone to give us our monthly update of the high school project.
That should work better. Very good. Very good. Good evening, Jamie Lynch from Dewey Engineering. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board, administration, and the Lower Moreland community. Before I give you my presentation, I just wanted to introduce you to a face that you probably haven't seen before. Miss Ashley Poglise works for Dewey Engineering. She is your full-time construction manager, boots on the ground, on the job site. She is the one cracking the whip on all the contractors, with a little help from me, a little help from Colin Case, and some other members of the Dewey staff. So I wanted to introduce that face to you this evening. You'll see her out in the field under the hard hat talking with everyone, and then she's going to do some of the monthly updates as things progress a little further into the future. So just wanted to put a face with a name for you. Also wanted to give you the 4 words that board members love to hear during new construction: no new change orders. So that's good for the month of January. And as you can see, if you've driven by and from the pictures, you're seeing a little bit of verticality on the job site. Even during the cold winter months, concrete operations are proceeding on the job site. And we're in the lower floor of the Area C wing, which is a 3-story classroom wing. And as you can see here, footings, foundations are in. There's a large retaining wall on the back of the Area C foundation. So this is part of the classroom wing. To the left is the classroom wing. To the right, where the cement truck is in this picture, is actually the new gymnasium, and behind it, the new mechanical room. So things are starting to take shape and go vertical despite some of the cold weather. We use cold weather concreting operations even when it is cold. That means we've got heat and blankets to protect placed concrete, both during the placement and during the curing period. We also have special procedures for testing that concrete. So despite the cold weather, while work is slowed to some degree, we're still moving ahead. Formwork is being assembled for some of the vertical walls that are happening. You'll see the bracing in this picture behind this vertical wall, which also serves as a retaining wall. So we're just waiting for suitable temperatures that are prolonged for a couple of days in order to place that concrete. It'll cure for at least 7 days before those forms are taken down and placed for the next section of wall. Some key elements are underway, like the elevator pit, foundations for the stair towers, grade beams, a lot of key structures that have a little bit of detailing that we can do while the weather is even cold. What we're trying to do is get the mason mobilized. He needs sustained temperatures that really stay above 40 degrees. So when we're down in the teens and single digits at night, I can't reliably start the mason without a lot of extra costs and a lot of extra winter masonry operations. But as you've seen in the weather forecast, end of this week looks a little bit better. We'll see what February brings. We continued and finished the site retaining walls for the project. The one that you see here in the back is below the athletic field where our staging area is. So all of the retaining walls, the decorative retaining walls, are complete on the job, and that subcontractor has demobilized. Ashley's included this picture because we're continuing to coordinate with Valley Center Park and the township on making sure that we keep the roadway to the park clean and open, and also make sure that any runoff or erosion from our site doesn't impede traffic patterns in the park, most notably over at the synthetic field. The electrician's also been busy. You've seen a new pole set out on Red Lion Road, and the electrical transformer for the project is on site, and the conduit and wire to that transformer is also installed. So that, along with the water line and some other utility work, a good portion of our sanitary and stormwater is in for the new building. So things have been moving along in that area. We've been working with Aqua to provide the new water meter pit for the job site. So that is getting ready to go in February so that we have water for the new building, both for potable water and also for the fire suppression system that's in the building. So looking ahead, we're looking for that mason to begin. We're looking for the electrical, plumbing, and mechanical rough-in to continue. The plumber can be ready to install sanitary and storm lines under the slabs in the building here soon. We've got those layouts done. All of the contractors are continuing to procure materials and equipment. As an example, the kitchen equipment has been purchased and is about to go in storage for the building. I'm sure you've heard the two crazy words, supply chain issues, that have been plaguing everyone. So all of the contractors are trying to buy everything that they can now and work on places to store it until they have a building to actually put it in. So that's all good, but we have to work with the contractors to figure out where they're going to put everything until we have a building that's ready on site. Ashley's conducting pre-install meetings on things like the elevator and masonry and data systems. And you might say, holy cow, what are you talking about, an elevator? Well, unfortunately, with the new requirements of elevator manufacturers, we really have to be thinking about what they need for install when the shafts are installed. And the shafts are installed by the masons. So that's what's looking ahead. We've had cold temperatures, as you know, really between Christmas and tonight. I can't, unfortunately, report that we've picked up any time as a result of that. Contractors are continuing to work as hard as they can in order to push ahead, but trying to complete masonry and concrete when the weather is just not cooperative is really just trying to push an elephant up a hill. So as soon as there's a break, we expect to see a mason on site. With that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Mr. Lynch, you mentioned December as a start or completion date. That is 1 month later than last time we met you, right? Would push back a little?
It's really the same. I think we talked about before Christmas or in December, the last time we were together. We have not lost time at this point in time. We certainly have not picked any up, I'm afraid to say.
And you said no change order, which is great. But buying this equipment early and then storing it, does that add a new cost to our storage costs that we didn't project?
So the basis of the contract is that there are no change orders allowed for increased material costs, and that contractors may, at their option, store equipment that they purchase, and that the district would pay for stored materials. Now, when a contractor buys, let's use the example of the kitchen equipment early, and he puts it in storage somewhere, he pays for the storage. What we do is we pay the amount in his schedule of values that's in his contract for that equipment upon receipt of suitable insurance and bonding information for the material that's stored.
Okay.
And the thing we're trying to protect the district from there is, should that warehouse burn down, who's responsible for the kitchen equipment that was inside of it?
Right.
So I need storage, facility insurance, and bonding information from the contractor. Now, that being said, extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures, and we were delayed some 4 months by the NPDS permit. If something comes and the contractor wants to deliver it to the site, and had we not had the 4 months of delay, but we want to figure out how to accommodate the delivery of the equipment without incurring additional costs from the manufacturer, but there might be storage costs if there's a warehouse here in Lower Moreland to put it in before we put it in the building, I could come to you at that time and say, we want to do something to protect the district against the vendor charges by paying what I would hope would be a smaller cost for additional storage because of the delay in the NPDS.
Okay.
Now, that gets complicated because there are ways that I can again protect you from that, and it's really a case by case scenario. So I'll advise you in the instance that something comes up, but so far, nada.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Lynch?
Thank you very much. We'll
All
see
right.
you again next month.
Thank you, Jamie. Mr. McGuinn, would you like to introduce our next presenter?
Thank you, Dr. David Heiser. As you recall, with the advent of that first presentation, we need to figure out a way to pay for it. The board has done 2 of the 4 planned borrowings. We have Mr. Scott Shearer from Public Financial Management down to talk to the board about the planned 3rd borrowing, keeping in mind, and I know Dr. Cohen is an avid watcher of rates, so we want to try to inform the board of our next steps and make sure we secure as low rates as possible, considering the Fed is most likely hiking the rates at the next meeting. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Shearer, Managing Partner of Public Financial Management, and this presentation, along with a very long parameters resolution that Mr. Shearer will just briefly talk about, was attached to the agenda.
Oh, there we go.
All right, everyone can hear me okay? Perfect. All right, well, thank you, Mr. McGuinn, for the introduction. So yeah, very fitting segue. You heard about the project and the progress being made, so now how are we gonna pay for it? And as Mark mentioned, so there's been 2 financings already completed for this 4-step plan that I guess we were doing kind of a lot of the preliminary legwork maybe in 2018, 2019, and even prior to that with some other folks. And then 2020 was our first financing, 2021 was our second financing, so here we are now looking for the third piece to keep up to the plan here. So I plan on going through this handout. Feel free to stop me at any point in time if you have any questions along the way. Let's just see if I can. Okay, there we go. So as far as the market update, probably most of you have been reading or watching on the news what's going on in the financial market. So it's some bit of volatile conditions out there, but just kind of going back to when we started the financing plan since early 2020, because of COVID, we've seen a lot of volatility out there. In August of 2020, long-term rates, which is really what we care about here, not so much what the Fed controls, the short-term interest rates, but the long-term interest rates hit their all-time low in the summer of 2020. Throughout 2021, rates stayed very, very low. And now early in 2022, we have seen an increase. The past 2 weeks, week and a half, have been pretty rough for the municipal bond market. Today and yesterday, we've seen things kind of stabilize out a little bit more. So I think just with all the stuff going on and uncertainty internationally, we've seen some issues going on in the markets. We've heard the Fed now looking to probably increase the short-term rates starting here next month in March, probably 4 or 5 times throughout the calendar year, which again, in some ways, that's kind of good for this overall plan because as they increase the short-term rates, that's going to allow the district to invest these monies that you borrow at a slightly higher rate. It's still not a great rate, but it's better than what you're getting. So that's a good thing. And then we just have to kind of watch what does that do to the long-term rates, which is what we care about for the financing. Will the long-term rates stay about the same? Could they increase or could they even decrease? And we've seen that over the years as well. So it's something that we're watching very closely. But overall, when we look at the rates and we go back probably 30 years or so, over 90% of the time, rates have been higher where they are today. So the first 2 borrowings I'll get into shortly had very low interest rates. The one we're projecting for this one, again, very low interest rates. So it's still a good opportune time to be entertaining this next financing piece. So as far as a little bit of the recap, just to reacclimate everybody, when we started this financing plan and did all the preliminary planning, and point number 2, the goal was after all the financings are complete to fully fund the project, that we want the overall annual debt service to be about what it was prior to when the project started. And that was about $4.2 million. So before the borrowings started for this project, the district had what I'll call an annual run rate of about $4.2 million out through the 24-25 fiscal year. And then it dropped there to about $1.9 million out through 2028-29 fiscal year. And then the district had no additional debt service payments at that point. So again, the goal is, in point number 3, with this overall multi-step plan and some of the other things we're doing to keep the debt service low by phasing in the debt, using district cash and refinancing savings, the goal again is to keep it around that $4.2 million number. And point number 4, just a kind of a very minor change in the scheduling, and Mr. McGuinn had already mentioned it, that our projections all along were assuming an April closing for this next piece, but due to the market volatility, that's why we're here today. We'd like to maybe move that up to have a March closing. Again, we just want to be prepared and capture the market while things still look good, although it is volatility still exists. But that's really kind of the only change that we see right now, and the overall plan is to just expedite closing by about a month. And then again, just a little bit more recap on what we've already done. So the 2020 financing that we did in November of 2020, it was about $9 million, $9.2 million that the district received basically pay the contractors. The average borrowing rate for that financing was just a little over 2%, with the final maturity going out to 2050. And then the transaction we did in 2021 in June, the district they received $23 million in the construction fund for that. That transaction also was combined with a refinancing. So the borrowing rate that we're showing here, the 1.48, that was kind of the combined rate between the refinancing and the new money. The actual new money piece was probably closer to maybe like a 1.75%, somewhere in that ballpark. So overall, you borrow basically $9 million at a 2.05%. You borrow $23 million at basically 1.75% when you're just looking at the new money. So again, the district has captured the market in pretty good times to lock in these low rates for us to be able to achieve the goal that we set out to do. So then the 2020 borrowing plan, again, is to go out here shortly, borrow basically $23 million. There'll be some capitalized interest included in there to help phase in the impact. After this transaction closes, the district will have about 80% of the funding closed and available to pay the contractors, again, after this transaction closes. And then we'd be looking to probably come back in January or February of next year to entertain the fourth and final cleanup piece that would be done in early 2023 calendar year. As far as the timeline, this evening, again, just a quick update on the overall financing plan. And we would kind of like we say an informal authorization because we do want to expedite this a little bit to be able to lock in the rates here yet this month in February to close in March. So that's where, kind of sort of like a head nod just to move ahead with the rest of the timeline, that if everyone's basically in agreement, we would release the underwriter RFP, similar to what we did back in last year in 2021. That would go out tomorrow. We would get responses back on February 11th, and then, time to evaluate everything. And then we'd be back for your February 15th meeting for the board to consider the parameters resolution that you already have a draft copy of, that your bond counsel prepared. Really, the only difference or the addition to that resolution would be the inclusion, and we probably even do it that night, include who the underwriter would be based off the RFP that we would be sending out if everyone's in agreement for tomorrow, and then close the transaction in late March. So as far as the interest rates, I think the middle chart, I think, sums it up pretty good. So this is a municipal index, so a tax-exempt municipal index. This is not exactly the interest rate applicable to Lower Moreland Township School District, but it's one that we use kind of as a proxy when we're looking at pricing bonds, similar to when maybe we've all looked at refinancing or getting a mortgage. A lot of times we'll use the 10-year treasury as a proxy or benchmark. Here we use the 10-year tax-exempt. And it goes back to 1993, and you can kind of see where it was. And obviously the big spike right here where the cursor is, that's when COVID hit and the market kind of shut down in the spring of 2020. And then where we are right now. And this box here is what I mentioned earlier, that just has a couple different stats on it, that when the handout was put together maybe a week or 10 days ago, that it showed that about 93% of the time rates were actually higher than where they are right now. That's a little bit lower right now, just given the bad 2 weeks that we had, so it's probably closer to 91% of the time. So again, when we consider where rates are, borrowing rates, it's still a very, very good time to be looking at doing this. This page here kind of has a lot of numbers on it. It's not so much for discussion for this evening, it's more for what the team uses to structure the debt, but basically this just shows all the outstanding debt of the school district. You have the note that was done back in 2011 for the qualified school construction bond, very, very low interest rate, basically less than 1% on that, so very low rate debt for that transaction. This series here, the 2015, basically pays off in this, the remaining amount pays off in this year, the 21-22 fiscal year. The 16A bonds, just a little bit left on those. And then the 2020 bonds, which is the one we issued in the fall of 2020 for this project. And then the 2021 transaction right here that we issued last summer. And then this was the refinancing component of that. So again, overall, the district has a very traditional debt portfolio, which includes very, very low interest rates. Again, that column here has an interest rate less than 1%, and then these are 2% or less. So really no debt of the school district, basically above anything above the 2 handle, which is very, very, very good. And then we get into the overall plan. What does kind of all this borrowing mean from a budget impact? So in the blue here, this is kind of the recap of the 2020 transaction we did. Again, kind of already went through all that, but the district got about $9.2 million from that. And here's the debt service down in column 8 that was attributable to that. In the red was the transaction we did last summer, which was the new money, basically $23 million of new money plus some of that refinancing. And so you'd see the debt service related to that. The green is what we're looking to do here now this month and close next month. Again, getting about $23 million for that. And so this column here, the column 13, is again pretty much based on rates from about 10 days or so ago. Probably when we come back on the 15th, you'll see a difference in that. They'll probably maybe be up a little bit, just given the rough week we had last week. Now, maybe the next 2 weeks, we'll see things come back down, but this column here in the green will probably change a little bit when we come back again, but again, that'll be based on the RFP results. And then, so after we complete the green section here, again, about 80% of the funding will be complete for the project. And then we have what I'll call the cleanup issue here in the purple for early 2023 calendar year. And then all that results in your net debt service over here of about 4.2, 4.3 million. So far things are going nicely according to plan. And again, after this transaction, we'll have most of the interest rate risk mitigated with having 80% of the funding locked in. And then just like in the prior transactions, in the parameters resolution that your bond counsel prepared, there's a maximum parameters schedule in there. So it's a little bit more than what we're looking to issue. It totals 26 million, so you probably see 26 million referred to in that document. This is just a schedule that we put in the handout just so we can explain it, and we give it to your bond counsel to include. But again, that's kind of normal procedure that when you do these parameters resolution, usually kind of upsize by about 10 or 20% of the amount that's filed with DCD, with the state. After they approve the transaction, then bond counsel will file another document to the state that basically says we got approval for 26 million, we issued 23 million. And this allows, basically what this allows us to do is to structure the deal in its finality where there's obviously all sorts of federal laws that we need to make sure we meet, but there's also a lot of state laws that we need to make sure that we meet. And one of the things is to have overall level or decreasing debt. And so depending on how the interest rates come in, we need to make sure we can adjust sort of these principal amounts in each one of these maturities such that we comply with state law. So that's why we need that flexibility that we get the authorization for the 26 million, but we are only planning on borrowing about 23 million for this financing. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions you have with the numbers or with the draft resolution as well that your bond counsel prepared. But again, basically the big step is we're more or less looking for an informal head nod to be able to send out the RFP tomorrow for the underwriter so that we can keep the process moving to be back on February 15th. Any questions?
Question, are there any fees associated with this round of borrowing?
Yes. So the fees they're paid at settlement. So the fees only get paid if the transaction successfully closes, which again, we're assuming would be the end of March. So from the RFP process that the district undertook I guess it was last summer, our fee will reflect the proposal that we had put in included a reduction in the fee, and the rest of the professionals will also be looking at reducing their fee as well. Now, there's some fees that we can't reduce, such as like the credit rating fee, that's outside of our control, but there will be a reduction in some of the other fees as well.
Mr. Shearer, the first borrowing, we got an interest rate of 2.05%, right?
Correct.
And then the second borrowing in 21 was 1.75.
Yep.
And what you're telling us that you don't think it's going to be 1.75, you think it's going to be a little higher? Do you think it's going to come, if you were a guessing person, and I know we can't ask you for guarantees, but will it be somewhere in that range between 1.75 and 2.05, you think?
Yeah, I think if we did it today, it would probably be about a 2.05 for this third piece. Yep.
Okay. And Mr. McGuinn, on your debt service projections, I mean, I would assume a 2% or maybe a 1.8% rate for 80% of the borrowing thus far is probably below your projections. Is that right?
Yeah, we've maintained the process. It's actually a couple pages up on that last column on the right-hand side of roughly 4.2, 4.3 million of debt service. That debt service is already built into our budget. So as we've stated numerous times, the cost the cost of the building project in and of itself for the building will not necessitate a tax increase. That money was already built into our budget. So, and remember, if those debt expired in an era of Act 1, you would find a very difficult time trying to get that level of debt service back to maintain all of your facilities. So we are doing exactly as we projected. If Mr. Shearer was here saying, you know, you would project an interest rate of 5%, then we would be having some different discussions. But right now, anywhere within 1.75, even all the way up to 2.25, for example, we would still be in really good shape.
Okay, thank you.
And we do have a little bit of, I'll call it cushion in the purple column, which is the transaction for next year. I think we have about maybe 35 basis points or about 1/3% of cushion built into the purples. It gives us a little bit of wiggle room for that last piece, just given, you know, it's almost a year away. So again, right now the green estimate is pretty much right on where the market was about a week and a half ago, which will fluctuate depending on the bids that come in and assuming the market settles down here shortly, and a little bit of cushion in the purple for that last piece.
Any other questions?
So as Mr. Shearer indicated.
Mark,
Oh,
one
go
more.
ahead.
Just
Sorry.
with the appetite of municipal bond debt, tax-free debt, it's higher now than it was 2 years ago or 1 year ago, isn't it? Like more institutions and individuals are looking for tax-free
Oh yeah,
income.
there's still a lot of demand. There's a lot of demand and a lot of demand for bonds from highly rated issuers like yourself as well.
Right.
So yeah, we have not seen that wane at all. Yep.
And so it's a competitive bid process, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, we're actually doing the RFP process in the first borrowing. We did the internet auction over the last year and a half, especially in the era of COVID. PFM has seen a lot better results through kind of old school manual RFP processes and generated a lot more competition, which actually benefited us at the end of the day. If there are no more questions, if the board is okay with Mr. Shearer releasing the RFP tomorrow, we can commence with the process. So unless anyone has any objections, we're going to move forward with that process. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. We'll see you in about 2 weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Shearer. All right, takes us down to our third presentation of the evening, and the district began a risk and vulnerability assessment, and it was conducted by the Pennsylvania Police Department, State Police, at our own request earlier this fall. The purpose of this request was utilizing the Pennsylvania State Police was to provide threat risk and vulnerability assessments and options for consideration involving both of our high school and Pine Road buildings. Obviously, with the projects that we have going on and for the future demolition of Murray, we did not feel that we wanted to complete a vulnerability study with it, and we focused on those two buildings. So this evening, Mr. Cole, along with Mr. Miles and Mr. Ovington, our Director of Facilities, are here to present some of the summary findings and some of the reactionary things that we will be bringing back to you as a board in discussions as possibilities based on some of the assessments that were done in this study. Mr. Cole?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much. Dr. David Heiser did a nice job introducing the RVAT and exactly what you'll see in this report. Just a little bit more detail about exactly what the RVAT is. So this actually comes from the Governor's Office of Homeland Security, and what it is a process where they have specially trained state troopers that will actually come on site and conduct a kind of an audit of the physical site as well as policies and procedures. So as Dr. David Heiser informed you already, we conducted this process this year at both Pine Road and Lower Moreland High School. What the process actually looks like. So the audit was conducted by a state trooper. He came and did 4 site visits to the high school and Pine Road. One of those visits was a nighttime visit. The trooper came and explored the exterior of the building and did an exterior evaluation at night while school was not in session. Funnily enough, it actually occurred during one of our parent-teacher conferences, and I had a couple parents mention they saw somebody lurking around. So our parents did a good job of keeping us informed as well. And then he also did a very thorough daytime assessment at each building where he then, while students were in session, conducted a very thorough walkthrough as well as met with us and did a review of our policies and procedures. All 4 of these visits occurred in mid-September. Just a few reminders as we go through this procedure. It is a discrepancy audit, so only findings will be shared. He did not necessarily in the report indicate any of the strengths that he saw at the building, although we did, due to the thoroughness and the length of the visits, did have plenty of opportunity to look at some of the things that are going very well. I'm going to only focus on high leverage changes. This was a very, very exhaustive report that was rather long, so rather than go through all of the nitty-gritty, we focused on a couple high-level changes. And then it's also important to remember that the audit really focuses on physical safety as the primary driver of the report and does not really give any consideration for the administration of an educational program. So all of the recommendations in here kind of default to the idea of safety primarily. We'll begin with Pine Road. So some of the key recommendations, and again, these are summary items. First, in the review of all of our policies and procedures, the trooper was very impressed with all of the policies and procedures that we have in place, whether they be preventative measures to ensure student mental health, to our first responders relationship, as well as our emergency protocols. So extremely impressed. Particularly noted our kind of at the ready flip grid, was very impressed with that. The only recommendation he had within that was to continue to review those policies periodically as necessary. He did note during the exterior visit that much of our exterior lighting at that time was not sufficient at several locations. He also recommended an increase in exterior signage, including no trespassing and usage hours posted. He did suggest installing a gate across the back driveway. If you're familiar with Pine Road, kind of our bus loop, he did suggest the possibility of installing a gate across there, as well as he did note that not all staff and students at Pine were displaying photo ID badges. We do not currently have student ID badges displayed for students, but he did note the staff as well. And then also suggested to increase the visibility of interior classroom numbers in our hallways. So if you've walked through Pine, you know we have our flags hanging that have grades and indicating it, but his suggestion was to make sure that classroom numbers are available to assist first responders in navigating the school. So as I mentioned, this visit was conducted in mid-September. We did not receive the final report until late in December or early January. So in the interim, after our visit, we certainly hopped into action and completed some of the recommendations that we anticipated based on our conversation with the trooper. So some things have already been done. One thing that he noted was some of the exterior foliage, particularly along the building, was grown to a height that somebody could, in theory, hide behind it or hide something dangerous behind the foliage. So we did work with our contractors to make sure those were appropriately trimmed back. We have repaired all noted lighting. Where it was possible, we have upgraded it, and I know Mr. Ovington can speak a little bit more to that if there's any specific questions about that. I have also included a staff reminder to display ID badges at all times in our weekly memos and have noted that has increased significantly. Some of the next steps that we've identified is, and again, some of this was out of that initial meeting where we kind of anticipated some of the feedback, so we started the ball rolling on a few of these. One thing that was noted that the electrical box on Pine Road does not currently have any bollards installed around it, so we're working to get those installed. One item that the trooper did mention was that there is no impediment to the front door from the parking circle at Pine Road. That was something he suggested, whether it be a bollard or even just a very large planter. He recommended that that might increase the safety and reduce the risk of an accident happening and having a car go onto the sidewalk there. And again, we are exploring planning some interior signage. Obviously, there'll be some reconfiguration of classrooms when the high school and middle school move occurs. That's a sample up there of one of the signages that we're looking at to just kind of update the signage to make sure room numbers are available. And we have already ordered, and it's already made it's on its way, some no trespassing signage around the nature trail, and then some additional no trespassing signage on the school building. Moving on to Lower Moreland High School. What is important to note at the high school was, again, with the audit being conducted in mid-September, it was a pretty active construction site. So you'll note, and if you look at the full report, you'll note many of the recommendations really were tied to the fact that it was ongoing construction at the time. But some of the recommendations, again, very similar, very impressed with the policies, and just continue to make sure that we monitor those moving forward. Similarly, increase exterior signage, no trespassing, usage hours, and he particularly noted the athletic fields needed some signage as well, indicating the rules about their use. Now this, again, driven largely by the fact that there was active construction. The signs directing vehicle traffic, visitor parking, and handicap parking spaces. At the time the officer came, it was just a blank slab of pavement, so that has since been updated. Similar as well, visibility of interior and exterior, or interior classroom numbers in the hallway, similar lighting concerns, as well staff with student ID displays. And then there was a note that there was some storage in the mechanical rooms of custodial items that he requested be removed. There were some exterior doors that were found to be faulty, and there is a fiber optic cable at the front of the school that comes into the building. He did note that that was not secured by anything, and that was kind of available should it be tampered with, or something happened to that. Much like what we did at Pine, some recommendations have begun already. Again, exterior foliage has been trimmed back. The lighting at the high school as well has been repaired and upgraded where applicable. And then obviously we all know that additional lighting will be installed during the construction process as well. Similarly, staff reminders to display ID badge at all times. Parking lot signage has since been added as part of the construction process, and all of the exterior door issues that were noted in the audit have been addressed. Next steps at the high school, again, bollards around electrical boxes, improved visibility of classroom numbers. The work on clearing out the mechanical rooms has begun and will continue to find alternate storage for those items. Covering around the fiber optic incoming service is being worked on, and they were part of the same purchase for signage regarding hours, so those are complete. And similarly, the approved field use, also that signage has also been created. So again, a very quick overview of a pretty exhaustive report. Largely, the trooper was very complimentary of both the physical plants and the procedures we have in place. Some small adjustments and some things that we're already well underway. So if you have any questions, I know Mr. Miles and Mr. Ovington are ready as well.
What is typically standard is every 3 to 5 years that your sites, your physical sites, go through some sort of risk and vulnerability study. One of the challenges now with school safety and the amount of school violence and shootings has been trying to get state police on site to do that. It is free of charge. It's gratis work for them to come and do that. Otherwise, you're paying an outside company to come in and do those types of things. So we were fortunate enough to secure the state police to doing that. I purposely waited to share the full report with you just to give you some context in hearing tonight some of the things. I'll share the full report again, like Mr. Cole said. It's pretty extensive and detailed in it, and so the board, you'll have an opportunity to see those elements to which. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I know it didn't come up in the report or in the presentation. Did the access road that connects Buck Road to Red Lion Road come up at all? That cut through that I still feel is just an issue at some point is going to. So many people use that as a cut through and don't obey the speed limit, and I always wonder what can we do about that. Is there putting a gate there? Do we own that road, or is that a township road, or?
Yeah, the road itself is owned by the school district. It's ours. It's a private road. Hence the reason the police really cannot enforce a lot of things. We've had speed signage put up, digital signage at times to show, those you're driving the speed limit, it pops up as you drive by, and we've done that on various occasions. You know, as we enter into the current high school being the middle school, we're certainly going to have to add some additional signage out there and make some decisions on what some of the other things that we want to do. But it is an access road that obviously the egress and entrance to it is important for us, and some decisions will have to be made whether or not we can enforce anything beyond that. I don't know. We'd have to get with code officials and township officials to find out what we can and cannot do.
So gating it during school
Right.
hours probably isn't,
To do those types of things, we'd have to find out what is allowable in that. There is if you probably have seen that, there's a partial gate at the end of the access road at Buck there. That's really never closed at any way one time. So some decisions will have to be made on that. You know, we have visitors in and out all the time. It's difficult. It is, you know, like you say, it's a cut through. With Buck Road being closed right now, it's not so much. So we're not seeing that inherent traffic coming through it, but I understand what you're stating.
Thank you.
I think an optimal time will be once we finish all of the construction and have a fuller campus there.
Mr. Berardi, if I may, I can share with you also that periodically over the years, we have worked with Lower Moreland Police for both seatbelt safety and for speed control. So while it doesn't necessarily resolve your question, we've been mindful of that and try to put some things into place primarily for our student driver safety, but also acknowledging that there is other traffic on that road.
thank you.
Is this Pennsylvania State Trooper RVAT audit the first our district has ever had from the Pennsylvania State Troopers?
It's the first since I've been here, so it's over 4 years.
Yeah.
And then, Mr. McGuinn, maybe you could speak to first time the state police have come in to do anything. No,
they were here before.
Okay.
This particular trooper wasn't here. It was probably, as Dr. David Heiser said, every 3 to 5 years. So they were probably here maybe 7 or 8 years ago. But this, to my knowledge, was a much more extensive audit, not audit, but review. And I can tell you, as the district is going through an every 5-year state audit, or every 4-year state audit, that is one of the big things from the lens of a Pennsylvania Department of Auditor General they want to see. Has your district gone through this process? Let us see the report. So we've sent those documents to the auditors. That's part of their performance audit, which not only revolves around financial but also school safety.
Bollards at the high school, I'm confused by that. That's a surprise to me. I thought we had bollards by the electrical box because we had an instance about 5 years ago, and we secured that part of the building. So was it not secure enough?
No, he's talking about the electrical service that's back further towards the oil tank where the new access road is that goes around the back of the building.
Okay,
The bollards are around the generator and the gas meters coming in.
okay. So different place than I'm thinking.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
For our next presentation, I'm pleased to introduce a proposal to our Board of School Directors for an opportunity for 2 students to serve on a rotating monthly schedule as representatives of the student body during school board work sessions. One way to nurture democratic citizenship is to engage students in the governing process of local school boards. While little research is found on student representatives in school boards, there is a consensus on the positivity of having students serve on the board. By creating opportunities for students to participate in the democratic process, school leaders can help student school board representatives to learn how to observe all laws and rules, how to resolve conflicts peacefully, how to demonstrate a commitment to the public good, and how to work for a community and cooperate with all stakeholders. Most student board members are high school students and serve a 1-year term. They have outstanding academic performance as well as rich experiences in extracurricular and youth leadership programs. Diversity is a characteristic of student board members. These students represent and advocate for their communities and use their role to improve educational outcomes for all students of their district. Currently in Pennsylvania, according to the Pennsylvania School Boards Association, approximately 60% of the 500 school districts have student involvement at board meetings. This evening, I'm proud to introduce 3 student architects of this proposal. Having the opportunity to meet numerous times with them collectively this past fall and early parts of this winter, these 3 students researched, connected, accepted feedback, and developed the proposed planning documents you see attached to this presentation this evening. I'd like to introduce sophomore Nidhi Ram, junior Juliet Yavas, and senior Mitch Marty, who together this evening will be presenting their student representatives to the school board proposal.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nidhi Ram, and I'm a sophomore here at the high school. No, sir? Is that better? Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nidhi Ram, and I'm a sophomore here at the high school.
My name is Juliet Yavas, and I'm a junior here at the high school.
And my name is Mitch Marty, and I'm a senior here at the high school.
We are here today to propose the idea of integrating student representatives onto the school board. This evening, we're proposing a plan that 2 student representatives from Lower Moreland High School be elected to sit at the board table and act as a liaison between the student body and the board as a non-voting member. This is not a brand new idea by any means, as many schools in the area already have a form of student representation on their school board, including Upper Merion, Masterman, and Northeast high schools. We envision that this position will be beneficial for both the student body and the board. The representatives will be a resource for the board by providing them with insight on the student body's thoughts and concerns, allowing the board to gain a better understanding of the student perspective. They will then update the student body on any and all important board decisions.
In front of you, there are 5 documents we created to give insight into this position. The first is called the Student Representative Proposal, which explains how we envision the position. It contains the role's basic guidelines. The second document mirrors the layout of the proposal and is intended to be given to the student representatives for clarification on specific procedures, roles, and responsibilities. The third document is a physical copy of a digital application for the role, which will be expanded on later in the presentation. We have also provided a copy of the official voting procedure document, which is an internal document that explains how voting for the student representatives will take place. The final document consists of questions that we predicted may arise during our presentation. And of course, we'd be happy to answer any other questions at the conclusion of our presentation.
To begin, we're proposing that the application process takes place in May of the previous school year. This means that applicants will be in grades 8 through 11 at the time of application and in grades 9 through 12 during their term. All applicants must consistently meet the criteria of the student eligibility form. This is the form used by athletics and other extracurriculars to determine a student's academic and behavioral eligibility. Students must also have the capacity to attend all work sessions, which includes obtaining their own transportation and reducing scheduling conflicts with any other commitments they may have. All student representative applicants must obtain parental permission regardless of age, including a media release form and emergency contact information. And finally, students must accept all responsibilities outlined to them in the Student Representative Manual, as will be discussed later in our proposal.
All applicants must submit a completed student representative application by the due date on the first Friday of May. The proposed application consists of 4 short answer questions and 1 letter of recommendation that will only be seen by the current superintendent. The application begins with a consent statement. This ensures that potential student representatives understand the amount of work that they will need to put into this job, as it is one of high regard. The short answer questions then ask the applicant to explain why they are fit to be a student representative. For example, the first question reads, If chosen, what is your plan to support the student body while in office? The answers from the short answer portion of the application will be released to the student body for voting. And the final section of the application asks for a letter of recommendation. The student body will not see the letter, only the current superintendent and the building principal will.
We propose that voting will take place on the last Friday of May, following the application deadline on the first Friday of May. Submissions will be restricted to one per student, meaning the form will be restricted to LMTSD emails only. Only grades 8 through 11 will participate in voting due to seniors having graduated before the start of the student representative's term. All voters will have access to every applicant's responses to the questions posed on the application. Ultimately, 2 representatives will be selected based on popular vote, with their term officially beginning in August prior to the start of the school year.
We propose that the term for the position of student representative is 1 year, lasting from August to June. This includes 11 total work sessions. The 2 student representatives must share the responsibility of making sure at least 1 student is in attendance on record at each session. There is no term limit for the position. Previous student representatives, however, must reapply at the end of each term.
There are a number of responsibilities that a student representative must fulfill. First, student representatives must create a presentation for each work session. The presentation will give an overview of what the representatives have worked on throughout the month. Additionally, student representatives will collect data throughout the month via town halls, surveys, and an open Google form for the student body to submit their concerns. The student representatives will then offer solutions based on this data as a part of their presentation. In between work sessions, the representatives will also have to create and distribute summaries of board meetings for the student body so that students can stay updated with board decisions even if they cannot necessarily make the time to attend themselves.
As we've previously mentioned, student representatives will present at every work session. These will consist of project updates, quantitative and qualitative data collected from surveys, and the solutions that can come from them. Eventually, there will be multiple ongoing projects related to the work of the student representatives. To give you a sense on what this will look like, we have created a sample presentation so you can see what an official student representative presentation would entail. We expect that most work session presentations will follow this general format.
A student representative presentation will usually consist of a general update at the very beginning. For this example, we drafted a survey to gauge how our peers feel about the following graduation requirements: critical writing, creativity and collaboration, government and civics, and personal finance. Something to note here is that this data is not legitimate and has been created solely for the purpose of this presentation.
This survey was created to aid the district in the curriculum renewal process. From this survey, the board will be able to have a better understanding of the impact these graduation requirements are having on students. The results will help the district identify if these graduation requirements and/or their curricula require updating in order to make the courses more effective.
In the process of creating the survey, we began with identifying an area of the district that has been noted by a majority of students to need improvement. Graduation requirements came to mind. Because it is around the time of curriculum renewal, graduation requirements are both necessary and relevant. Additionally, graduation requirements affect every student in Lower Moreland in one way or another, making this matter both important and urgent so as to better inform Lower Moreland board members and administrators during this time. When writing the survey, we felt survey takers would get the most authentic experience if integrated directly into our questioning. As such, the survey questions are designed using I statements. Students will provide responses based on how closely they resonate with the statement. An example of a statement posed in the survey is, I have used skills learned in personal finance and other courses I've taken and/or outside of the classroom. Our survey responses make use of the Likert scale. Use of the Likert scale has statistically shown to account for bias minimization in surveys, not to mention as a set of responses that students are familiar with. If students select options strongly disagree or disagree, there's an option for them to elaborate using a multiple select feature with responses like, quote, I felt this course was too easy, I felt the course was too hard, and I felt the course curriculum was outdated. There is also another option for students who wish to elaborate beyond the restrictions of the survey. To make sure all students are included, there is also an option for students currently taking the course or those who haven't taken the course yet.
For critical writing, the majority of survey takers disagreed with the statement that they have used skills taught from the class. The general consensus for those who chose to elaborate was that the course content is too similar to other courses. One quote shared was that they are already taking honors English. We can deduce from this that the course is unproductive for students, as no material is being taught in this course that has not been taught in other required courses. As such, we have determined that there is a need for immediate change.
For humanities, we did not receive many responses since the course is limited to students in the gifted program. But the responses we did receive were greatly varied. Students who reported not finding the class useful said that they found the class too easy. That being said, most people did enjoy the class, indicating that there is not enough data to warrant the necessity of an immediate change.
For creativity and collaboration, we found that the majority of students have not used the skills learned from the course in other courses or outside of the classroom. Many students already participate in the district's various music programs, hence why many survey takers report feeling like the content taught in CNC is redundant or repetitive. As such, we've determined that this course definitely needs to be reevaluated to better meet the needs of the students.
Survey results regarding government and civics were greatly varied, but we determined that ultimately no change is needed at the moment. 80% of survey takers who had taken the course reported that they have used the skills learned in Gov and Civics. Because the course has proven to be valuable to students, a course update is not necessary at this time.
And for the last graduation requirement, personal finance, the majority of survey takers have not yet taken the course due to it being primarily for seniors. Of those who have taken the course, the majority reported that they found the skills taught in personal finance to be useful. Thus, no immediate change is needed at this time. Based on the results of the survey, we can now take the time between this meeting and the next to work alongside members of the cabinet and department heads to brainstorm workable solutions to the problems identified in our survey. These solutions may include, but are not limited to, the following: developing criteria for possible course waivers, providing course alternatives, or making modifications to the existing course curriculum. Again, we'd like to reiterate that this data is not legitimate and has been created for the purpose of this presentation.
Before we come to an end, we'd like to restate the purpose of the student representative: to act as a liaison between the student body and the school board. This position will benefit the school board by bringing student perspective to the table, literally. Please take a moment to look over our FAQ doc, and we would be happy to take any additional questions that you may have. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Nice job. I told them to be prepared for lots and lots of questions from the board, so give you an opportunity. And I just would like to thank them for coming out this evening and taking the time throughout the fall. We met numerous times. There was a lot of feedback. There was a lot of back and forth. And I believe, really, as they stated in the recap here, it's to give voice to students, to you as a board, and a representative voice of students to you as a board, and ultimately to improve student outcomes is our goal. And there's going to be a variety. We would anticipate there to be a variety of different things probably going on throughout the year of projects and voice inclusive in that. And again, just to be mindful that this would be a two student representatives. The proposal is for 2 student representatives. They would rotate each month. One would be seated at the work session table and give an opportunity to deliver a presentation, answer any questions you as a board member may have, and to stay for the entirety of the meeting if there's other questions that you may have about various other topics that come up throughout the course of the meeting itself with possibly other agenda items. So I'll leave it open to any members that would like to ask any questions.
Yeah, I had one question.
Sorry.
You had mentioned that there are 2 student board members, and then they rotate.
Yes, our plan for that procedure is that there would be one that is officially on record for attendance, and then we'd also have one that could be potentially seated in the audience, because during this process of determining what we envision student representatives, we decided that the best option is to at least have 2 student representatives, because having one sole student have that as a job can be a lot of pressure, so we took that into account before making a decision.
How long would the 2 representatives be representatives for?
Yeah, so the term is from 1 year, from August to June. So after the end of the term, they would have to reapply if they're eligible, or if they graduate, then a new student representatives would be chosen.
Thank you. It was well done.
You have a question? Or you have one?
I would like to say that it was an excellent presentation, and just from the data that you provided on the information you collected can be a great benefit to the board, which hopefully then will be a benefit to the student body. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cohen. Thank you, thank you, Mr. Steinberg, for your question, and thank you, Dr. David Heiser, for that wonderful introduction and the beautiful outro, and just easing us and the audience as well into this. We really appreciate this opportunity. Go ahead, Ms. Baker.
I thought that was a wonderful presentation, very thoughtful, very professional. Do you foresee that you have ongoing surveys and that's what will drive your presentations?
We also have a few other ways of collecting information from students, such as you can see in our manual, we reference a town hall, which is something that we actually got from another student representative in a district, which was essentially an environment where students and potentially board members can come and informally gather to discuss various issues, and these can be determined in advance and such to kind of guide the discussion. So through those, so essentially qualitative data, and via surveys that could be taken in forums and stuff to get the actual quantitative data, we'd be able to have enough to say, this is what the student body wants. This is what these people want, and this is, this is the correct way we can approach a situation to get the best possible outcomes, like Dr. David Heiser said.
Thank you. And it's also, are you working with any staff member or someone as a mentor that would guide you through this, or is this purely student-driven?
This presentation in and of itself has been purely student-driven. It's an idea for me personally as a senior that I've had kind of lingering in my mind for several years now, and I even spoke to Mr. Geiger about it at some point. But at the moment, there are no staff fully on board until this proposal becomes something more than just a proposal. We do have individually teacher mentors that we look to, and I hope that we can get them on board, especially those that are department heads, to aid us with some of our bigger decisions.
Well, thank you. That was very, very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think the idea of a student representative is a wonderful idea. It's just some of the little details that I'm wondering about. I know that you want the representative to really represent the student body, and that's probably where the idea of an election came from. But I'm just thinking practically, if you've got 8th graders maybe voting for juniors and seniors that, they may not know them very well or whatever, I'm wondering if maybe if everybody's submitting an application to the superintendent, that maybe the superintendent or the superintendent and the administration could then select the representative for the year. I'm just trying to be practical and maybe make it a simpler process. But I think the idea of having students represented on the board is a wonderful idea.
Yeah, this was a big point of contention for us, and we had spoken to Dr. David Heiser about this numerous times. We ultimately decided that a student election would be the best way to pick a student representative, because we don't want this to be another administrative chosen position. if we're truly representing the students are the ones who know us best, and they should have the power to elect who they think are the most fit to be their student representatives, which is why they're given all the responses that, in the application.
And I'll just jump in here. That was a point of contention that we discussed thoroughly in the fall. We knew it was going to come up, and we looked at some other school districts that actually have done it various ways, some of which have been selected by the board itself, some of which have been selected by the superintendent or other administration, and others that have gone through a voting system. We felt that we landed on the finality of it was landing on the fact of it's a democratic process, and it allows for the voices of all students, if they participate, to elect a representative for them. You know, one of the biggest things that we're initially going to, if the proposal moves forward, are going to have to communicate this well to students and get them to understand what this actually is. And I think in working, as they mentioned, with teacher leaders, would be very, very helpful in helping to mentor, along with my cabinet. You know, some of the components to which they're talking about. This lands directly with our curriculum, and certainly with Mrs. Drennan in development of curriculum and things that would be very important through her processes to which could be applied. So I think some of the things, and we talked about this proposal being big. We wanted it to be large. This was not about, and we referenced different other ticky-tack types of things that, you know, we didn't want to get involved in. We wanted this to be at a board level with large thinking involved in some of the processes, and not to say that something would be decided meeting to meeting to meeting. That, you know, a proposal or a presentation might be delivered sometime in the fall, and decisions may not be made until spring because it has implications of financial implications, staffing implications, changing of whatever it may be. So on a large scale, we felt that would, through a democratic process and through initializing with the help of adults around, many of whom you see here this evening and working in administration along with other representatives in the schools, would be the best application for it. So I understand where you are. We went back and forth in the fall with regard to that as well.
Congratulations on a great presentation. It's very comprehensive materials you provided as well. I think my question is similar to Ms. Baker's in terms of, you mentioned having themes. How are you going to come up with the themes? Perhaps an advisor might be helpful to help formulate those themes. And do you have any proposed possible themes already in mind? And then secondly, how are you going to encourage student participation in the surveys that are going to be key to your data?
To answer your first question regarding themes, this was something that we went back and forth on a lot, especially because certain issues may also intersect with the work of the DI Council. So we do put in our manual that there will be ongoing Google Forms that students can volunteer information to, and it will be tracked, so it won't be anonymous by any means, just for the safety of the students, where they can put problems they're having. I know, so that it's not just something, you know, locker room talk or something that kids are murmuring in the halls. We have documentation of students bringing up their concerns, and then we can take this, synthesize this information, and then usually that will lead to a particular discussion point. If not, we'll kind of steer it to be something that the board is working on and something that intersects with the work of the students, like we mentioned, for example, curriculum and curriculum renewal. And I think the idea about having an advisor for this would be excellent. I'm very, very interested in that. I'm sure these lovely people behind me are as well. So that is certainly something that we will take into consideration. Hopefully there will be some beautiful teachers, obviously, that will be willing to do the work like this. And your second question, do you want to take over? What was the second question? Could you repeat your second prompt? So we plan that because forums in the high school at least are taking place, I believe it's every other Thursday currently, We plan these surveys to be run as part of those forums because that time is already allocated. It's about 25, 30 minutes at the end of a school day where students are, if they don't have other tasks already laid out for them, this is a perfect opportunity for them to dedicate 5 to 10 minutes to really sit down, gather their thoughts, and throw it out for us to make changes. Certainly it's hard to ensure that people are participating, and those who want to participate will and those who don't won't, but we do strive to have maximum participation, and those methods will take a lot of time to really get down packed, as it did with many democratic processes in the school and outside in the real world, if you will. So I think this will come with time, ultimately, Dr. Lee.
Very good job on the presentation. So just to echo Mrs. Baker's comment and James Lee's comment, I think more so than just an advisor or a mentor, I think the way this program is going to be most effective is there really needs to be a facilitator on the other end, keeping the program going, accountability, maybe even vetting some of the themes to make sure that it's appropriate to be brought to school board, so that you're not wasting your time, putting something together that maybe shouldn't even be coming here. So I don't know who that would be, but that's something I think really needs to be put in place. And then also, you had mentioned that at least one of the representatives would come to the work sessions. I think it would be important for continuity that they both be present as best as possible. And I would also encourage you to come to not only just the work sessions, although you won't be voting, most of the discussion takes place at the public sessions. So if there's something that we are discussing to vote on that was presented to us at a work session, I think it would be important for one of the students to be present so that if we had questions on something, you would be there to answer it. So I think you should be at both meetings, and I think both representatives should make an effort to come to both meetings just for continuity. That's just my observations on it.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Mr. Brody. I think that's going to come down to the communication aspects of us initializing this program for students to understand the enormity of the position, the amount of time and energy that it's going to take to be a part of this. And we did mention, and the reason we landed on 2 was that there could be a unique situation where somebody just couldn't attend that evening to have a backup, but the expectation really would be that they would be attending all meetings, sitting at the table, each of them alternating for the work session meetings to be there. So that's going to have to be something, if the proposal moves forward, clearly stated and understood. And to answer your first question, part of that is going to fall back to me, and we talked about that with the creation of initial themes. They came to me with a number of themes, to which we landed on some other themes, and that we thought more appropriate with regard to the types of things that would be discussed at the board level to be part of any improvement of student outcomes. So I believe that initially we'll start with me, we'll start with our cabinet, we'll start with administration at the high school to assist with that, whether it develops into something further and whether we would plan to staff it within an advisor or something like that. I think we allow that to be determined in the process, whether that's going to be needed and required down the road or not.
The public sessions as well, though, because if we have questions on something,
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you so much for your feedback. I agree with Dr. David Heiser. It's exactly what I was going to say. We'll definitely add, if this moves forward, that the student representatives must come to all board sessions where they are allowed. And for your first question about like a teacher mentor, yes, we're going to work closely with Dr. David Heiser and his cabinet. And I agree with all 3 of you with a teacher mentor would be a great resource for the student representatives on a more day-to-day basis, just to generate ideas and approach students, find ways to approach students in like new ways.
Excuse me, John, go ahead. No, you can go.
I was going to say, to reiterate some of my colleagues, I think you guys did a great job. I think it's a great idea. I like it. I'm excited about it. I look forward to it happening.
Thank you, Dr. Butler.
Yeah, my questions were answered by other board members. Specifically, I was ready to find out why not public sessions. I agree with you, Mike, on that. So you, as Dr. David Heiser said, you spoke to various schools and students. Was it primarily a consensus that there's 2 student representatives, not more? Because I'm just expecting there to be interest, and if there's a dozen, maybe 15 students that apply, why 2? Why not limit it? Why not add 3? That way we can have someone participate in a public session. If there's too much time commitment for 2 people, why not add a 3rd?
This was also another point of contention for ourselves and Dr. David Heiser. I think ultimately it came down to, at the end of the day, we can amend any of this proposal. We did create a section for amendment. So if there is a jarring need for another student and they cannot take on the workload by themselves, despite the consent statement that they have to sign on the application and the manual that outlines how much of a time commitment specifically this would be, we can certainly add something like that. However, because we kind of framed it in the sense of, for the student council, a lot of the neighboring districts that have something like this, such as Northeast High School and Upper Merion, they have student representative integrated with the student council. And for Upper Merion, for example, there is 1 student. For Cheltenham, there were 2. So it greatly varies per district and per the needs of the students. We figured this would be the best way to ensure that we get a little bit more diversity in the terms and the people that are showing up and speaking out. And of course, all 3 of us, we come from different backgrounds. We come from different expertise in schools and different areas of interest and different places where we specialize. And I think we came down to 2 as the kind of golden number. Mm-hmm. If there is a need, we will certainly add it. And as with anything that the beautiful members of the board here have mentioned, everything can be added, everything can be changed. Mm-hmm. Nothing is particularly set in stone just yet, and we do appreciate all of the wonderful feedback that you're giving us. It's really helpful.
And I'll just add that, we landed on 2 for the purposes of, it's a lot for 1, certainly, mm-hmm. and the need for 2, I think, is obvious. But there needs to be continuity and comfort in working with, at this level, with individuals and working pretty closely and having more involved. Mm-hmm. The hope would be the connection back to the student body would be utilizing some of the larger groups that we have at the high school currently. Mm-hmm. Our NHS groups, our POPS groups, our student council groups, so they can be ties to those individuals in mm-hmm. forming some of the other types of things and ideas that they have. And these 2 representatives being that conduit back to. So that's really why we landed on 2. Again, it's, we certainly want to be as inclusive as possible. Unfortunately, as you become more inclusive, you'll also sometimes don't benefit from having the needed things that you need in terms of getting things done. So I'd caution really going outside 2 right now.
Makes sense.
If the proposal were to move forward, I would start with 2, and we can analyze that after a year's time to see if it's just too much of a load for 2 individuals to carry, and we want to include others.
Exactly.
We talked about grade representation, too. Should we have grade representation across 9, 10, 11, and 12? We talked about that, and then we got into the numbers of 4 and said, it's probably a little bit too large.
Right. And Michelle, I do remember the conversation we had about a year and a half ago, and I'm super excited that you took the initiative with your friends to do this. It's a great idea.
Thank you, Mr. Geiger. Wouldn't have happened without Nidhi over here.
Okay, it appears you're off the hot seat for now. All right, thank you. Nice job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
So our last presentation, or really not a presentation, but I wanted to, and speaking with Ms. Baker, we wanted to place this on the agenda if there was any discussion that the board had, questions that the board had with regard to it. At our last public meeting, the vote was placed on there for both the test to stay and mask to stay, which again was a modification of what we already had to a certain degree going on with our test to stay programs with students with regard to it. Again, in speaking with our solicitor, the board has full and legal discretion when it comes to the health and safety plan, and it's playing out differently. The ball is in the court of all school boards in the state of Pennsylvania and all areas to which it is a requirement to have a health and safety plan if you apply for any of the ESSER funding. And there is a component too, and inside the Dr. Hild, if you can just open the health and safety plan, you'll see the required elements that need to be inside of this plan and must be voted upon by a board and must be approved by a board. And as you go down to the boxed area, you can see the various sections to which need to be completed, and the board itself has discretion over that. The ESSER funding for our ESSER 3, well, actually we have a 7% set aside that was introduced by Mrs. Drennan and you approved at our last meeting. Those monies will be spent in the 23-24 school year. They must be spent by the end of the 23-24 school year. And all districts that are receiving any of these, applied for and receiving any of the ESSER funding that will go into those years must maintain moving forward as it is right now, a health and safety plan. The components of that health and safety plan are at the full and legal discretion of the school board to make those decisions as to what goes inside of that. I did have, and I spoke to Mrs. Baker, I did have a conversation with our Montgomery County Office of Public Health on Thursday. That is our traditional meeting time for superintendents. I did broach the question of, schools with various mitigation strategies that are being applied and recommended inside of, by the health department inside of schools. Is there any considerations moving forward as to what that means when it comes to various metrics? Metrics right now, as it applies, tied to our masking inside this health and safety plan. I spoke about the fact that there are spacing considerations that we are taking into account. We are fully advertising all the hygiene and necessary things. We are hosting and have hosted various clinics for vaccine. We are currently masking. We are doing a lot of things inside of our buildings, which are sometimes not often done in just normal society. Is there going to be any considerations of any changes to some of the considerations when it comes to metrics? They didn't have an answer for me on Thursday. Said that they will take that into consideration, but did not have any responses to me when doing such. I did go in today. The numbers drop every Tuesday. It does appear that our numbers dropped about 50% from last week. And I think a lot of that was to be expected, that we hit that pinnacle and that peak a couple of weeks ago. We slowly came down. There was a significant drop just in the past week, where the numbers are with our incident rates and such. Our numbers, our case counts have significantly reduced inside of our buildings as well. We're at, I believe, 3 at the high school as of today, positive, 10 at the middle, and 20 at Pine Road of positive cases that have been reported to us. And as you're aware, and through your approval to date, as it becomes, we really do not need to quarantine any students any longer if they're in agreement to go through our mask to stay program, which is simply continuing through our levels that we're in right now, wearing a mask and testing on between days 4 and 6. So we've been successfully able to keep any close contacts that are found, mostly with our bus situations, inside our buildings. And really the only folks that are home isolating are anybody that is positive at the time or is symptomatic, showing signs. And we follow the CDC guidance, and the Montgomery County Health has adopted that. After 5 days, if those symptoms do go away, they are brought back in. So That's it in a nutshell in terms of some of the components to this plan. And I'd be happy if the board has any questions for me with regard to the plan itself.
So when you say they didn't have an answer for you, they just didn't respond, they said, we'll get back to you, they just looked like deer caught in the headlights, which was it?
There was no response. There was an acknowledgement to what I had said, but no response to any time period or any components to that.
Dr. David Heiser, I don't have any questions about the plan. I know our plan, but can you tell us, you know, I think Mrs. Cannon and Mr. Barty brought up questions about, you know, the Bucks County, Montgomery County situation where there's two different health departments with two different requirements. Are there any Montgomery County schools that are not, you know, wearing masks, right, or mask optional?
So currently there were, originally, as of a week ago, there were two school districts that had gone mask optional. It's the Souderton School District and the Perkiomen Valley School District. And you probably read about more recently, last week, there was an injunction placed on the Perkiomen Valley School District and for 2 weeks until an evidentiary hearing takes place with regard to their mask optional situation. There was a lawsuit that was brought against the district by, I believe, a number of parents. So that school district itself is tasked then with reapplying the masks. And actually, it's a little bit beyond what they had done something similar to what we're doing now, where they allowed the exception of the former order that if you're involved in per se athletics and engaged in activity that you could remove a mask. In this injunction, even the athletes now for those 2 weeks have to wear their masks. So there's two current cases that are going on right now, both North Allegheny, which is in out in the Pittsburgh area school district, a similar case in which there's an injunction in which there's, I believe, I don't know if a hearing date's been set for the evidentiary hearing of it, and now the Perkiomen Valley School District. To my knowledge, Souderton School District is mask optional, and I believe this is the second or third week now that they've been mask optional. Okay.
So obviously, it's clear to me that we're not going to get any type of support or changes from the county. I mean, if they were going to make any changes, I think they would have. I don't think they have it's just not on their radar right now to make any changes, you know, to the fact that they don't take the questions, they don't answer the questions. So obviously, it's definitely in the hands of the school board, and we do have a health and safety plan in place. But my concern is that it's a health and safety plan that really doesn't mirror what they're doing at the county level or at the CDC with regard to when you need to go with mask mandates or to mask up. And I'd like to see us, unless the administration feels that they can't support this health and safety plan or handle it, I don't see there's any reason why we shouldn't go to the health and safety plan with regard to masks recommended unless we are in the high category. Last year, that's exactly when we started seeing our first COVID cases, and when it dropped out of the high category, below the high category, we never saw another case again. So to have to wait for the low and moderate, or for the moderate to happen, it's just not following any other guidelines from any of the county or Office of Public Health or the CDC. And it's just a number that I don't think you're ever going to get to. And not only are you not going to get to it, even if you do, with a township like Lower Moreland, with the population we have, we all know if you have a clear understanding of how the incident rate works, you know, 2 people having COVID in the township can bring that number from 49 per 100,000 to 100, or 75 per 100,000. And the last thing we want to do is go to a mask optional for a couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden, we have to tell the children, well, sorry, you got to mask up again. And that would just be a nightmare, not only for the students and their parents, but for the administration to try to keep, stay on top of that. So I'd like to see us keep our health and safety plan in place, but certainly use the high category for now as the metric for when we go to mask recommended. Unless you tell me, Dr. David Heiser, that that's something you're not comfortable with or that the administration can handle.
So my presentation at the start of the school year included that. And I think what we looked at in making that recommendation at the start of the school year was the data for the past year. Now, I know the variants changed, but inside of 100, it became pretty apparent to us, and with a different variant, you might just get to certain numbers more quickly than other numbers. We were able to track that. Outside of 100 per 100,000, it's just nearly impossible. If you ran the math right now on 500, I think that would be, based on our count.
It's about 70.
70 inside the township. We make up about 20% of the township. That would be, 14? And right now, our cases are 35. Right. So it's twice the amount. So it's impossible to really land on. What we did land on when calculating it for inside of 100 was a little bit what we felt was more accurate and really did follow the trajectory when it comes to that. So, comfort level, and certainly there's risk with regard to anything and everything with regard to that. But I do, I stand by the evidence of what we were able to track and how we were able to track that to determine that that was a safe, that would calculate approximately 3 to 4 possible, if we were to be at 100, it'd be around 3 point, I'm not sure what, 3.3, something like that of positive cases, statistically speaking. And that's just statistically speaking. And there's certainly risk with everything. At 50, we'd be at 1.2, 1.3, statistically speaking, cases inside the district, and that's where we kind of found that. So, at the levels that we've been operating, certainly it is the Omicron variant is a less severe, and certainly, however, certainly the last thing we want to see is anybody get sick when it comes to that. And I understand the pressures and certainly the voices of those that have been speaking in regards to the mental toll and the mental health toll that masking can take on individuals. At the levels that we've been seeing, it certainly wouldn't be recommended. Even at the 500 levels that we're seeing now, it would not be my recommendation to do that. That would just be turning a blind eye to something and creating some unsafe conditions possibly for spread and transmissions. And we've been limiting really to the best that we can find, limiting any types of transmissions to it. Can we say that cases don't arise from being in school? We can't say that. We don't know, but what we're not seeing or nor have seen has been the large scale 4, 5, 6 students in a classroom or in a cafeteria or various other areas. So we know the mitigation strategies have been working through some pretty tough times. I mean, we've been up to 1,200 per 100,000 of cases, but the masks, we have to assume that the masks do add a layer of mitigation. We know the spacing adds layers of mitigation. We know the vaccines that have been in play now are adding some of those. So, your question to me was 100, and I certainly stand by the data that we looked at the start of the year and the comfort that we would have in doing it at that particular metric. Beyond that, I certainly wouldn't and couldn't recommend that type of an approach to it.
Mr. Berardi, if you could qualify or explain when you say that the current health and safety plan doesn't meet Montgomery County or CDC guidelines, it does it not?
I'm having a hard time hearing.
I think you said that the current health and safety plan does not meet Montgomery County Department of Health or CDC guidelines,
I said it doesn't mirror what they are recommending for the CDC and for the Office of Public Health when they use their mask to stay metrics and when they're using other metrics, they use the high category as their metric. They don't use the moderate as their metric, is what I'm saying. Is our health and safety plan was tweaked in August based on the recommendation of school board. They were not comfortable with that metric that the administration recommended, so they tweaked it down to the moderate level. And I'm saying that if the administration, based on the data that they've had from the previous school year, is comfortable with that metric, then I think we should consider going back to that metric for the health and safety plan moving forward.
One of the things I just talked about, or just jump in here, I think it's important, you know, some of the things that one of the things that they have in the current mask to stay guidance is that they will only, if you decide not to universally mask when you're in substantial or high, and we have an incident where we've traced an individual who may be not fully vaccinated or not vaccinated at all, which right now, because we're masked, we're able to keep them in our mask to stay, keep them in person as long as they remain asymptomatic and tested negative in 4 to 6 days. One of the things that the county, because I know Souderton and Perkins-Oman Valley asked this question, is that the county right now will not supply any future tests kits to the school district. What you have, if you decide to move into that and apply that kind of strategy outside of their substantial and high, they will no longer allow or send or make available to you any future test kits. You have what you have. We have a stock of kits now, and we have a regular resupply of those weekly that our administration goes and picks up, and we're able to maintain that and do the types of things. That is one of the qualifications. So I just want to make you aware of that. I'm sorry, cut you off.
What you're saying is, in the absence of the current plan, if it were lifted to a higher level, that would eliminate mask to stay, or that would?
We could continue the mask to stay program. What it wouldn't allow us to do is, if we do run out of test kits, the county would not resupply us with those, you know, based on their CLIA license. They are not able to restock outside of that metric to those schools, to those 2 current schools. That was the answer that they received.
Doesn't that sort of tie our hands? Like, it almost feels like they're holding us hostage to that program. I mean,
well, the answer to that is yes. Obviously, there's purpose in that. I think they feel the need in a substantial and high category that schools should be masked, and the application to what you approved in that mask to stay guidance required that those metrics be met when doing such, and anything outside of that, while you could continue the program, you could continue the mask to stay. If there becomes a point in time where you run out of tests, it wouldn't be supplied through them. Now, that could possibly change. You know, guidance changes all the time, and you know, as they learn more and evolve, and we've seen that with CDC, we've seen that with county, we've seen it with, you know, multiple health agencies, that guidance, recommendations, things of that nature have changed through time and evolved through time. There has been some shifting with Montgomery County Office of Public Health with regard to some of their thinking and endemic types of strategies and such, but that is something that I need to make you aware of as a board.
I don't expect you to know this off the top of your head, but how many tests do you think we have in our possession right now?
Oh my.
Hundreds, thousands?
No, not thousands. We may have maybe just over 100 to 200 tests. And again, part of that is, you know, we don't want to be sitting on, right? the large amounts of, and that's why there's a resupply every week, and you kind of run into a groove as to how many you think you need and so forth.
And how many do you think we're using currently under these conditions on a weekly basis? Are we testing any staff right now, or is it all students?
We're still operating our voluntary staff assurance testing, which we have about 20 to 25 individuals weekly that we're going through. So they're part of that. You know, in a week's time, there could be 30 to 50 tests, I would imagine, something along those lines.
Just want to comment again that we really can't compare to when we saw cases rise last year, because last year we were in hybrid. So we had half the number of students in the building and they were sitting 6 feet apart. So when we saw our first cases start to pop up at school, we were under very different conditions than we are now, with all the students back in the building and everyone sitting much closer together. And then also, it can't be ignored that it's a different variant that we're dealing with now than we were a year ago, because the variant that we are seeing now is a much more contagious variant. So we really can't draw conclusions.
I'm going to ask you that you remain respectful, and please do not call out. Please do that. I'm going to ask you to be respectful. I'm going to ask you to be respectful.
There's a time.
Folks, there's going to be a public comment section. That's the appropriate time. I'm asking you to cooperate so the board can have a discussion. Thank you.
Continue.
That was my comment.
Well, I mean, again, there's so many different variables to that, and you know, there's argument that will tell you that the Omicron variant, it may be more contagious, but it's also not as, I guess, as harmful, especially for vaccinated. And this time last year, we also didn't have anybody vaccinated. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things that were going on last year. You know, for us to keep looking in the past, I think is not productive at all. To look at other counties, we've had this conversation, is not productive at all. I don't even think looking at other school districts in our county, to me, I've said it a million times, I don't care what any other school districts are doing, and I don't care what any other counties are doing. I want to be able to make our decisions based on what we can handle in this township and this school district. So I understand your comment, and I don't disagree with you, but it was a year ago, and a lot of things have changed. There's a lot of people on this board who also made a statement that once the vaccines were available for all of our students, they would be more willing to consider changes to the health and safety plan. And here we are. The vaccine is available to everybody who chooses to get it. So at this point, you know, that it's a lot of things should become optional, including masks, you know, and that's.
I think the availability of vaccines is important, but just because they exist doesn't mean that they're being used, and that until there's sufficient vaccination in the community so that disease, in fact, does decrease, students, staff, et cetera, will remain at risk, and we need to be cautious and have a plan to make sure school is as safe as possible for everybody.
They're also widely available, though. I mean, you could go tomorrow and get a vaccine. And at some point, we have to leave it up to the families to choose what's best.
And I would encourage everyone to go out and do that and get vaccinated so we can drive down disease rates and we can make sure that school remains safe.
I'll just say that, yeah, back in August, when we heard your presentation, and I also voted for the substantial and high, but to do it, even since August, there's been a lot of change. I mean, I don't think back then that students who were 5 years old, right? I don't think 5 to 12 was approved. I think it was just 12 and above. There weren't boosters. So things change all the time. And now we're getting information out about masks. Some don't work right. KN95 are effective and all that. So we're hearing things all the time. You're saying that 100 cases in Lower Moreland per 100,000, which is high, means that there's about 3 students in our district who have COVID. Is that what you're saying?
So when I run those and again, they're statistics, right?
Right.
So they're taking into account the population of our township, the population of our school, and making assumptions along the way. The measurability of 100,000 is so that all communities can be measured equally.
Right.
And we're just under 14,000
Right.
residents here. Our population in the schools make up about 20% of that.
Right.
So that's how I run my statistics when you see, whatever it is per 100,000
Right.
to get just to get a truer sense of what real cases could be. And again, it's statistics.
Right.
We found in last year that it ran pretty true to those statistics. And again, as Mrs. Natter pointed out, it was different setting, right? We had different settings at that point in time than we currently do now. We didn't have different settings in our lunchrooms. We still had 6 feet spacing,
Right.
which we do now with
still do.
everybody with masks off. And we didn't really see any types of connections to transmissions in those types of settings. But again, it's spacing at 6 feet for those eating purposes.
I mean, this is, the frustrating part is if 100% of our students were vaccinated tomorrow and 100% of our staff, nothing changes with regard to the masking guidance by the county. So they're not taking into account vaccinated students or even students who have contracted COVID and have recovered. So there's just not a tie between what the county wants us to do with regard to masking, because if 100% of our students were vaccinated, their masking policy doesn't change one bit. And to me, that doesn't make any sense.
I think you say that, but 100% of the students aren't vaccinated. We don't know what that would do to case rates. We don't know how quickly they would come down, and we don't know what the county would do. I mean, I think that I understand everything you're saying. I understand everyone's concerns about people not having to wear masks any longer than they have to, and I think we should all continue to try to get to that point in a way. I'm so sorry, excuse me? If you could just give us a minute.
Continue, Dr. Butler.
So I think that we all want to continue to get to that point as quickly and efficiently and safely as possible. It's a moving target. The incidence rates, understand, we're not doing those don't count. That's not surveillance testing, right? That's not telling us exactly how many cases there are in the township, how many cases there are in the community. That's how many are identified per a certain population. We're not going out and randomly testing everyone to know. I assure you there's many more cases than we've identified. So it's we have to be a little cautious with saying, well, if there's 50 cases, then it's 2 students or 4 students. We don't know those exact numbers, and everything's imperfect. As far as masks go, some masks are better than some masks are better than other masks. Masks properly worn clearly are better than masks improperly worn, but clearly some masking, some proper masking, some useful masking is going to be more useful at preventing transmission than no masking. Yes, we're not going to get every kid in N95. We're not going to be walking around in spacesuits. None of this is about making zero risk. It's all about mitigating risk, lowering risk, keeping school safe.
So you said until we get to that point. I'm just curious, what is that point in your mind?
Now my point is what our current health and safety plan says.
To get to where our transmission in the county or in the township is at 49 or less cases per 100,000.
Yes, I support the current health and safety plan.
I've given this, thought, and I feel that, it's the recommendation of Dr. David Heiser originally, which was 100, which was high. Once it falls below high, I think I'd feel safe at that point, not waiting till moderate. I think I've come to change. And that may not come until March, right? We don't know. It may not come till who knows, but when it does, I think, there's enough like I said, there's vaccines, there's enough things out there for a long time that, and you know, I trust, you know, Dr. David Heiser saying now, and I don't have to make it more strict than, you know, than what he thinks.
Does anyone
So-
have anything new to add?
Just want to say that
Do
currently,
you have anything new to add? Any other new items? Anything new?
I would just like to see on the next session, on the public session, I'd like us to bring the health and safety plan to a vote, to amend it, to change the metric for mask, for the masking optional to be only when it's above the high category. And bring it to a vote, and everybody's
Mr.
entitled
Geiger?
to their vote.
I second that.
No, I mean,
Above-
anything else?
Above the high category or at the high category?
Yeah, there's not, okay.
Above the high,
Anything-
over 100.
No, we're not doing that.
So when it's 100 or less, we can make masking a recommendation, not mandated.
Okay. Anyone else?
I think basically when it comes, the health and safety plan after discussion should be voted on first as the way it stands. If it's defeated, then readjust it, and make a second recommendation on what would be acceptable based on what you said, Mike.
It's already approved the way it stands.
In other words, we have a current health and safety plan that has been voted on. My suggestion would be that at the public session, we bring it up again and see how the board feels about it. If it is defeated the way it currently stands, then make amendments to it.
Would we vote, guys, this is only going to work
We
if
don't
you guys let
ask
us
for
have our
public
discussion,
opinion
okay?
right now, please.
I don't know that, and again, not real familiar with the procedural, and we don't have our solicitor here, but I don't know why we would vote on something that's already in place. It's
Because then you'll know if the board in general, and Scott can find out from our solicitor if that's appropriate. If it's not appropriate, then we open it up to either modify it or not modify it. So I think we have to ask the solicitor what's appropriate. And I'll go along with whatever he says.
Okay.
I'll leave that in your hands, Dr. David Heiser, but it just seems to.
Yeah, I will get in touch with our solicitor to run both scenarios by him, and I'll report back to the board, and we'll communicate back certainly well prior to our next meeting as to what type of motion would be appropriate in this scenario.
Thank you, Dr. David.
Okay, we should take us down to our updates. And Mr. McGuinn, is there anything beyond what we had with Mr. Shearer?
No, thankfully not. I will defer my presentation as Mr. Shearer took my thunder.
All right, thank you.
He could
Mrs.
never
Drennan?
do that, Mr. McGuinn.
Your updates.
So in the last year and a half to 2 years, a lot of ESSER funds have been provided to districts across the country for the mitigation of learning loss. We have applied for and been approved for ESSER 2 and 3, as well as our application is in for the set-aside grant. Because so much of this grant is tied to student achievement, we wanted to give you an update on the different things that are at play currently in the district. So if you recall, our priority areas for these grants included students, the mitigation of COVID-19, and the expansion of our DEI efforts. As it plays into curriculum and instruction, we had a number of ESSER-funded supports in place, including intervention specialists, an engagement counselor at the buildings, Pine Road and Murray Avenue, and the agreement with Talking Points to provide a two-way communication tool with families. So one thing that we focused on this year has been our intervention processes. There were a lot of assumptions made about what students would return to full-time school with in the way of needs, in the way of skills, and how would that impact our daily processes. And each building began the year with a data study, and they have been continuing these data studies as the year has gone on. We made a concerted effort to amp up our benchmark assessment efforts. We're looking largely at curriculum-based assessments. State assessment data did become available to us well after the school year had started. We've looked at behavioral trends and behavioral referrals and the social emotional needs of our students. Some notes on the state assessments. So when the PSSA and Keystone scores came back to us, and it was very late in the fall and early winter when the complete score reports were available, because if you recall, the state had extended the testing window from last spring all the way into late fall. Along with our testing results came a letter from the state stating they would not be producing the aggregate score reports that you're accustomed to seeing. And that was due to lower participation rates, the timing of the assessments, and other contextual factors related to COVID-19. They recommended that we focus on student performance once they came back to us, seeking other data points, and drawing our own conclusions. In other words, they encouraged districts across Pennsylvania not to make any critical decisions based on PSSA and Keystone. And we have heeded that general recommendation. Some general observations of performance in Lower Moreland are that the only building that saw lower participation rates actually was at the middle school level. Both high school and Pine stayed pretty consistent with student participation. All of our tested areas saw a decrease in performance than what we would normally be accustomed to. With the exception of grade 4 science, which actually saw an increase compared to what we were accustomed to. And most tested areas, even though there was a decrease in proficiency, still were higher than what the state average was reported in 2019. So we're doing a lot of internal looks at our students and where they are. We're utilizing a growth mindset rather than a deficit mindset. And we've seen some great improvement already. So I asked each building to help to provide some of the trends that they're seeing. And at Pine Road, we're using iReady diagnostics. It's given 3 times a year, and it allows you to see growth over time. There's also a correlation to the likelihood that a student would be at or above grade level by the end of the year. So from Diagnostic 1 to Diagnostic 2 at Pine Road, these were some general increases that we had seen. When iReady reports out, there are 3 tiers. It's a triangle, and your groups move, and the triangle gets shaded as kids grow from the lowest tier to the top tier. So of the lowest tier in that triangle from the fall on Diagnostic 1, they saw a 67% decrease in that category, which meant a good number of students have already moved up into the middle tier. I apologize, this mouse is actually the opposite of the mouse that I typically use, so that's why you're seeing it go up and down. I'm sorry for that. The summary of student supports at Pine Road IST. What we sought to do here was give you a sense of how many IST and SAP referrals we have now, compared to what would have been in a typical year. We are slightly ahead of IST and SAP referrals that would have occurred at this snapshot in time from last year, but not significantly so just yet.
Mrs. Drainer, can you just explain and share with the board the IST meaning and SAP, just for...
Sure. IST is the instructional support team. It consists of reading specialists, math specialists, principals, assistant principals, counselors, and they keep an eye on student progress. And then SAP is your student assistance program. So that is counseling-based referrals and students who appear to have social emotional needs. Math support, if you notice from 2021 to 21-22, there's been a significant increase, but largely because we've been able to add additional staff in this area. So for the first time, we've been actually able to grow math support because we have an additional IST teacher this year. This has been a great benefit because for the first time in many, many years, we've been able to use both push-in support as well as the monitoring and small group instruction, similarly to what we do for reading specialists and how they interact with our Title I students. So the additional support in math has been very beneficial. One thing I'll say about ELA kind of globally is that ELA performance has stayed rather consistent. So the bigger gaps that we have seen when assessing students have been in math, and that's largely because ELA and reading and writing and analyzing text occurs across curricular areas. It's not limited just to English reading instruction. So our students have, for the most part, remained fairly consistent in terms of performance. It's been much more stable. We have about the same number of students in ELA support that we did last year, and we continue to monitor kids move in and out of support as they, gain skills or seem to need some assistant support, some other support. As far as Murray Avenue goes, they too are shifting. Their groups aren't shifting as much as they did at Pine Road, so you'll see their decrease is a little slower than it is with the Pine Road groups, but there is forward progress being made. We have been able to utilize the instructional support teacher that was acquired through the ESSER grant at Murray Avenue. They're targeting specifically 6th grade and then also consulting and helping with 7th and 8th. The IST referrals at Murray Avenue, you can see there, as well as the SAP referrals. SAP's ahead of what it was in the previous school year. IST referrals to date are about the midpoint, just over of what it would have been last year. Again, the intervention specialist has become a part of the IST team, and that's been a really beneficial layer to supporting students as they came back to brick and mortar schools 5 days a week. Murray Avenue, again, the numbers are higher because we're able to provide that additional support by way of the funding from this grant. In terms of ELA, the new HMH text has a growth measure that comes with it. It's administered 3 times a year. They're currently working on administering the second growth measure, so I don't have any update on that in terms of shifting of performance groups. They're also giving their twice annual benchmark in November and February, so that will be coming up this month. And students are being added to reading intervention. It's kind of fluid based on their needs as more needs arise. At the high school, we did give CDTs in October. The second dip was in January. CDT is a growth measure, so the first batch of data doesn't give you all that much actionable information, but the January dip compared to the October dip is really where you see the likelihood that students are progressing at a good pace and will be proficient on their Keystone exams. That data has been shared with the classroom teachers for biology, algebra, and American studies, and they're now making plans and adjustments based on that data. Student supports for Lower Moreland are very similar. Their IST team actually is called the Child Study Team. Their intervention specialist has had a flexible caseload of students, and they're targeting at-risk students. One of the fears that we had last year as we were looking to open this current school year was with the re-engagement of our learners. We did have some concerns about student attendance, if you look at how we're doing overall, marking period 1 to marking period 2, and then what the annual attendance was for 18-19 and 19-20, you'll see we're on task. So we're thrilled that our students are coming to school, they're showing up, and they are engaging with us. And because it was also included in the ESSER funding, the Talking Points app allows for two-way communication. So it's not a translation of a PDF, it's not a translation of an email. Teachers and parents can actually communicate by text message about students. About 67% of our families have opted to receive their messages in English, but the remainder have chosen their native language. So this gives you a sense of how valuable this is for parents who do not speak English as their primary language, and the volume of messages that are being generated in this system. One of the things that we did for professional development with administrators this summer was to use a text called Leading the Rebound. And this quote reminds us that we continue to approach everything with our students and their performance from a growth mindset rather than a deficit mindset, and that's definitely working to our advantage and also to the students' advantage.
Thank you for that snapshot, Mrs. Drennan. Any questions from the board? And we would just, again, wanted to highlight some of the components to a lot of what the spending was when it comes to our ESSER funding and some of the highlighted programs that we know we put into place in the last 90 days. All right, thank you. And Mrs. Gaudo, your presentation?
Certainly. So tonight, my presentation is on Act 168 of Pennsylvania law, which went into effect in 2014. And the law was designed to add another layer of protection to the many efforts that are in place to make schools a safe place for students. So the Act requires all applicants to disclose all their former employers where they worked in a paid position with children under the age of 18. So this would include schools, daycare centers, summer camps, and similar situations. So schools are prohibited from hiring applicants, hiring anyone who has committed child abuse or sexual misconduct. That's the basis of the Act. And what the applicant has to do, they have to fill out a 3-page form for each previous employer, and then they give them to the district, in this case, Lower Moreland, and the district has to send them out to the employer. The applicant can't send them themselves because you always want to have the chain of custody. You don't want them to be fraudulently filled out. So we get the form, we send it out for signatures and verification to the employer. So you can imagine this takes a lot of time to send the forms out. Right now we do it by email and fax. We have to track who has returned a form, remind the employer if they haven't returned a form, and then track which forms are completed. So an applicant can have up to, say, 10 employers, previous employers, if they worked at other school districts, camps, for substitute agencies and so forth. So it's a big administrative burden. And so on the board agenda tonight, I have a technology solution that will help us comply with this act. So that's why I bring this act to your attention at the moment. When we get to that part of the agenda, I will go into much more detail about how the technology will help us comply. But just wanted to give you some background on the act itself.
Mrs. Gowda, while you're up there, why don't we just do that now?
Okay,
why don't we jump down to under personnel, item D. It makes sense without gapping this.
Right. So this is an agreement, a proposed agreement, a 3-year agreement with IU13, which is the intermediate unit in Lancaster, Lebanon area. And they've come up with a technology system that has been in place for a number of years, and a number of other school districts use it. And we'd like to bring our department up to date. And the cost is $500 initially for the setup and training of our staff, and then of course, Joy Mayfield and Wendy Weir in my office, to be trained on how to use this technology, and then it'd be $5 per applicant ongoing cost. So we have about 100 applicants a year where we need to get these forms filled out. So it'd be a small ongoing cost, but initially $500 up front. But it would really help us to better comply, make sure that we have better compliance with this act, and just relieve the administrative burden on the office as well.
So, this recommendation, again, is really entailing to try to streamline the system that's currently in play. We're probably 10 years behind in the system of where you would think if we're still faxing and emailing and such. So we do have this in the budget. We could afford this process, and we really are wholeheartedly recommending this. And you may ask why Lancaster Lebanon Intermediate Unit, why not MCIU? Well, you have to think about intermediate units are really set up to be entrepreneurial systems. So a lot of their funding outside of what's dedicated from the serving school districts comes from different entrepreneurial systems that they put into place. So they sell products that go out statewide and actually across country, and to which people invest in and purchase and such. So the MCIU does not have anything such as this. The Bucks IU does not have anything like this. And oftentimes, there's non-compete clauses that the IUs have with one another, so that they're not tripping over one another and so forth. So Lancaster Lebanon has developed this, and it's vetted. It's been 3 years now standing?
At least, yeah.
At least 3 years standing, and we've looked into it quite clearly, and it looks like it would be a great system to have for us to just streamline the systems.
And I have to commend Joy Mayfield, who's joined us in July. Her technology skills have really helped the department rise. So, the board docs, she's helping to manage that, and, this will be another aspect of what she's doing. So she's helping to really bring us up to date into the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gaudo. All right, that takes us to Mr. Giordano, your update.
Thank you. Good evening. I just wanted to provide some updates on what's happening in the offices of student services. Our early intervention numbers have continued to increase. If you recall, when I first provided an update in December, we were at 14. Last month, we were at 16, and presently we are at 19 students with special needs moving into kindergarten. So, as a reminder, early intervention is a service that's provided for students with special needs in the preschool age. So as those students move to school age, we transition them into school age programs. And 19 is a high number. It's the highest number we've had in the 11 years that I've been here. So we had a meeting last week with the team. The team that reviews and meets with the parents and reviews records is myself, our school psychologists, our related service providers, teachers of special education, school counselors, and administration from Pine Road. We met last Friday just to prioritize the number of students that we have, prioritize the reevaluations or the adoptions of the IEPs that we have for students coming in. So we're within the next couple of weeks, we'll start working on the evaluation process and get rolling with that and get prepared for September. Our extended school year program this year will run from July 5th to August 4th at the dates and times listed. Our program will run at all 3 buildings, and as a reminder, or as a note of interest for board members who may not remember, extended school year is a program that's mandated by the state for students with special needs who meet one or more of 7 criteria as laid out by the state, chief of which is regression of skills over long periods of break. So with extended school year is based strictly on the goals in a student's individualized education program. So if our teachers of special education keep data constantly, and we review the data and make a determination as to the need for an extended school year program. As I said, there are 7 data points, chief of which is regression of skills. We look at long breaks such as summer break, winter break, long weekends, There certainly are other criteria to meet, but that really comes down to basically that's one of the main criteria. So typically each year we have between 40 and 60 students attend our program. We offer it 4 days a week, 3 hours a day. Students come with various needs. We offer related services at the program. Some students are there for all 4 days, all 3 hours. Some students come for less than 3 days. Some students come for an hour a day. Some students come for 3 hours a day. And some students come just for related services. So we have a combination and a variety of needs. It is not mandatory that students attend. It's mandatory that we offer it. It's mandatory that we find a student eligible or not eligible. But it is voluntary on the parents' part and the students' part. Our annual the Montco Lip Sync Show presented by the students at Lower Moreland High School is this Friday, February 4th, and right here in the high school auditorium from 7 to 8:30. This is a program that is a point of pride for our students in certain programs in the district that we present every year. This year it's back in person. Typically we have we combine with Hatboro Horsham, other districts such as Upper Moreland, Cheltenham, Jenkintown in the past. This year it's a little smaller probably for obvious reasons. We have students from Mrs. McCaffrey's class at the high school, Mrs. Coleman's class at the high school, and I believe Mrs. Mattioli, Mrs. Giuliano, and Mrs. Cohen's class at Pine Road, combined with Hatboro Horsham this year. And it really is something that the students get excited about in those programs. They start preparing for this somewhere around probably early December. And they look forward really every year to presenting it to their family and friends and anyone who wants to attend. And this is really my last point is really just I guess a plea to local businesses who might be owners of which may be residents of the district or business owners of local businesses who may be watching the board meeting. We're looking to really beef up the supported work experience for our students with special needs at the high school. Supported Work Experience is a program in which our students participate with support from the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit job coaches, where they actually leave the high school building every day for a couple hours a day, depending on how long the IEP team decides that would be beneficial to them. And they go to local areas of local jobs, local businesses, and perform certain tasks with the support of a job coach. Typically, our program is right now with the support of the IU, the placements are pretty far away. So the IU, as you know, is situated in Norristown, so a lot of the placements take place up there. We know we have a lot of businesses down here, and we began the reaching out process to local businesses with the hiring of a new supervisor at the MCIU. That supervisor has left. There's a new one, so we're trying to kind of speed the process up a bit and kind of get a jump start on what was started by the previous supervisor. So if anyone's listening out there or watching that has a need for assistance at their place of business or thinks they have something that might work out for our students, let us know, either myself or Mrs. O'Malley, and we'll get rolling on it. We do plan on issuing a letter or email of sorts to local businesses as well, and doing our own outreach, more than beyond just this update here at the board meeting. So that's all I have.
Mr. Giordano, do local townships, neighboring townships, have similar challenges placing their special needs students in local businesses, or is it because Huntington Valley has fewer relative numbers of local businesses compared to neighboring
Yeah, it's a particular challenge for us due to the number of local businesses.
Can we partner with local school districts?
We can do any number of things. We know we have some businesses in our area, meaning really in our neighborhood, that are probably pretty appropriate, for the needs of our students, and really close. We can work on a lot of skills, even if it's something where a student may have to could walk there with a job coach, which is a number of skills built into one, or even a short bus ride. If we could work in public transportation, or just if it's far enough you need to take a yellow bus, fine. So there's a lot of things we could work on, besides job skills, typical life skills within our community, if we stick within our community. But yes, if need be, and if the right opportunity arises, we would partner with a local school district, which is where the IU comes in as well, because they may have students from other districts already placed in businesses, outside of our district, or in our township.
Frank, What are we doing to reach out to local businesses? Because I'm probably sure there's a lot that don't know.
Yeah, oh, sure, there is. So really, we've just started. This is step number one. Step number two is letters, emails. Your typical modes of communication that we have today. Really, we have a form letter that we would simply send out, seeking assistance and participation.
And is that happening now? Like
That has not happened yet. It will happen. It will happen
Okay,
within the
will
next couple
happen.
of weeks. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks.
Do we have students working within the school district or within the township offices?
We do. We have some students who work in the school district, and we have students who work at Huntington Valley Library in the township building.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Hilt, your technology update.
Thank you, Dr. David Heiser. And I just want to mention last year's lip sync event is on the district YouTube channel. So if anyone would like to view that, it is always an outstanding event. I wanted to call attention to last month. We talked about some curricular resources through our single sign-on product called ClassLink. So this is just a visual reminder of the number of resources that we have available to students and staff. And I thought it would be a good idea to talk about some of the hardware in the district. Just to let you know that for a relatively small school district, we have thousands and thousands of devices. And I certainly want to call attention to the technology team, teachers, students, families for really taking care of those devices so that students have access to the resources each day that I shared last month. So just talking about hardware that you can see, and I include the security cameras in that, we have over 4,000 daily connected devices. That does not include the hundreds of keyboards and mice and monitors. This is just technology that a technology team member would need to fix, troubleshoot, or repair. And those numbers and those devices continue to grow and be replaced. And certainly that's a testament to the budget process and to the school board's commitment to technology. So as you can see on the screen, we have some iPads, Apple laptops, and Chromebooks that the school board members, students, and support staff use. And here are the numbers broken down in regards to Chromebooks, and that number does include loaners, because we want to make sure that anytime there's a device that goes out for repair, we have a device to replace it. We have iPads in specific curricular areas, and then on the right-hand side, we have hundreds and hundreds of staff devices, projection systems, and peripherals. So we've definitely made a commitment to technology in the district. And again, I want to call attention to the tech staff that supports those thousands of devices every single day. Our technology spotlight for this month is one that is near and dear to my heart, because when I'm at Murray Avenue and I have a chance to hear the announcements or see the announcements, it's always a point of pride for me as a former business education teacher to see the hard work that goes into these productions. And so our technology spotlight this month is regarding Murray Avenue students who work with Mr. Horrell and Mr. Kelly to produce daily MA News broadcasts in the TV studio. Students work in teams to create each episode using a variety of technology. The students first work with Gmail and Google Docs to draft and submit scripts and communicate with one another during the process. Once the scripts are polished, they're played on teleprompters for the student anchors to read, very similar to the productions that you see on your televisions. On the production side, the students use OBS or Open Broadcaster software to record. They arrange, edit, and publish. You're going to see a short technology tidbit for this month highlighting all those things that I just mentioned. certainly nicely done by the students and staff at Murray Avenue to produce those news broadcasts and then publish them on YouTube. So kudos to them, and I certainly always enjoy being able to spotlight the really great things that the students and staff are doing. So thank you, and I'll happy to answer any questions that you have.
Anything for Dr. Hilt? No? Thank you. Okay, we're going to jump down into personnel, and unbelievably, at this time, we have no personnel motions under item A1, which is, I think, a first.
Yes, exactly.
We do have an item under B, and we again have nothing under item C, and you've already heard D. So, Mrs. Gaudo, would you take item B and share that?
Sure. So item B is to high school. I would like to recommend John G., who's a building sub at the high school, to monitor the fitness center for the spring. It's used after school by teams to condition for their sports, and the fitness center supervisor just make sure they're using those equipment safely and properly, and it's that the area is cleaned up and back in order to be used during the school day for PE classes. Mr. D does have a health and PE cert, so he's certainly qualified for this position.
I'm sorry, could you repeat? Mr. D is currently a teacher at the school, or?
The building substitute? A building substitute? Yes.
He's stationed in the building all day and subs out as needed throughout the course of the day. And we heard all about Agreement D, or item D of the agreement. So it takes us to curriculum under professional meetings. Mrs. Drennan, would you share those, just quick summaries of those?
Yes, we're requesting your approval of professional meetings. You'll see there are a number of meetings related to academic programs, language arts, math, and then there's also a master scheduled building workshop that Mr. Stroop has requested to attend. Having been in charge of a high school schedule and a middle school schedule at some point in my career, I'll tell you that this master schedule building workshop is probably well worth the money, if not more.
All right. Any questions? All right. Next area under diversity, equity, and inclusion, we have a short presentation. If Mrs. Gaudo, you have the principals coming forward for this. So Mr. Cole, Mr. Miles, Ms. Dilks, let's come forward. We wanted to just give you an update based on some of our recent activities that have been taking place at the building level, and just sharing with you those items, and if you have any questions based on some of our more recent action steps that we've taken.
Good evening, Dr. David Heiser and the board. So at the high school, we have been establishing our community engagement team. Currently, we have 9 students. I believe that that number is growing, 6 staff members. We've been meeting as a team since August with the 2 teachers who are running that organization, and there are a number of activities that are being planned, and the next meeting with a larger group is next Thursday, February 10th. Anticipated activities include monthly cultural recognitions, school-wide initiatives to celebrate diversity, also creation of Instagram and Twitter messages that I would put out through my messaging, and also on ongoing equity walk of the high school. This is a term, this is an idea that came up through the DEI Council and one of the facilitators to walk through a building and look at the representation through artwork, student artwork, other pictures and other words, phrases, welcoming messaging to ensure that we are inclusive of everyone who is in our building. Our Martin Luther King Day services are continuing. Our food drive, that's real easy to accomplish, and that was accomplished. We do have an outdoor project which is being planned with the weather that has been postponed. The project itself is to replenish the wood chips along the walking trail down at Valley Center Park that goes around the playground. Township commissioners and I walked the trail. Currently, there should be large piles of wood chips. We're just waiting on cooperative weather. The township will provide the gloves and the tools necessary to accomplish that project. And an additional project will be a cleanup project, which will happen in the spring. And that will be open to the larger student body for sign up at that time. Currently, we have about 30 to 35 students who are signed up and ready for this current project. Internally, besides the DEI Council and DEI training sessions with department chairpersons internally, we have been discussing implicit bias for agreements, strategies to engage in difficult conversations, and most recently, we did include a discussion starter in a recent forum. And that would give an opportunity for students and staff to get used to these conversations, get used to being a little bit uncomfortable with these conversations, but be able to be open and share some ideas. So this will be something that will continue periodically through the spring and moving forward. And that's the high school, if anyone would have any questions at this time.
The diversity training for the staff, was that a voluntary or was that something that was offered to all the staff?
That is for all the staff at staff meetings. So that's something that I primarily took on along with my assistant principals to use the opportunity of staff meetings to share some of the things that I and we have learned along the way in order to be able to, again, have these conversations and have this awareness all day, every day in the classrooms.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Ms. Dilks?
Good evening. For Murray Avenue, if you can just advance the, I can do that here, sorry. So an update on our community engagement team. We have 10 staff members on our community engagement team. We also have 4 parents at this point. We've also have a Murray Avenue DEI Council that is a student group. And this group, we asked students recently to apply to be members of this council. We opened it up to everyone in the school and asked for students who would be interested and asked for them to express their interest to me. And so we really got a great response to this. So we have 19 students to date, and our council is actually still growing. Some of them are actually recruiting their friends to join this. The major goal for our council this year is to plan a spring event to celebrate cultural diversity, kind of as a follow-up event to the Pine Road Multicultural Night. So this is sort of the middle school version of that. And also for them to plan and organize school-based diversity initiatives. So we want this work of this particular council to really be student-driven, and I have a very enthusiastic group of students who are doing an amazing job. In terms of our discussion starters, this was something that grew out of the work of the District DEI Council. Our January discussion starter was actually a No Place for Hate classroom-based lesson, and that was about humor. And we talked about all different ways that humor exists and also how to respond to inappropriate humor and how to identify that. And those lessons were done in all 3 grade levels. And then we are also, in terms of our work going forward with our discussion starters, we are piloting a social emotional learning curriculum designed to build relationships in the classroom. And these are daily prompts that are based on a theme for the week. This started this week, and we anticipate this going to the end of the year, where we'll decide if this is something that we want to continue with for subsequent years. So some of the themes include things like stress reduction, health and wellness, appreciation, coping skills. There's a different theme for each week, and they're designed to be short and increase relationships in the classroom, and then also kind of prepare them for sharing information about various topics so they can get comfortable with those kind of discussions. And then our Martin Luther King Day of Service, we did a donation drive for toiletry items for the Valley House, which is a shelter that is focused on teen homelessness and emergency housing for teens. We also collected donations and made fleece blankets to donate to this shelter. We made, I think, about 20 blankets that day. Those are being finished up this week as our event was rescheduled due to the weather. Any questions about the middle school?
Thank you, Ms. Stokes. Mr. Cole?
Good evening again. So I will explain a little bit about what's happening at Pine Road. Very similar structures, but a little Pine Road twist on it. As far as our community engagement team, I'm sure all of you are quite familiar. Pine Road has a very long-standing multicultural night. And the work that has gone on for that has existed in a committee, a diversity committee at Pine Road that has been in existence for many years. So our community engagement team started with our diversity committee that exists already at Pine Road. And what we've done is we've expanded that group to take the 11 staff members and add an additional 16 parent volunteers. So, not every meeting are all 16 parents at, but we have 16 parent volunteers that have become a standing part of our Pine Road diversity team to kind of expand and meet the needs of that community engagement team. Some of the major activities are planning the multicultural night. They do also help plan and organize some school-based diversity initiatives. We have a couple display cases at Pine Road where we display some monthly diversity displays. We maintain our community connection page where we host resources related to largely the various recognition months. We have resources on there currently for both Lunar New Year and Black History Month. Those are available to the community, but they're also used, we found, very heavily by our teachers as well as resources. We've also, as we talked about, and I'll kind of transition into those conversation starters that you heard referenced by both other principals, our committee at Pine Road worked in actually developing those conversation starters. What we did was we established at least monthly conversation points. Most months it's at least 2. They are whole school conversations. So they are topics centered on the theme of belonging is what we chose to focus on this year. How can we support a feeling of belongingness in our schools? We have partnered them with long-standing structures that have already existed at Pine Road. So our Buddy Day activities that have existed for years, those conversation starters are part of that. We've also incorporated them into our ongoing assemblies, which are currently virtual, but that is, again, an opportunity for the whole school to have a conversation around a common prompt. Last month, I believe, was how can we make sure that our friends feel like they belong at Pine Road? So really focusing on that idea of making sure that everybody feels included. All students participate, and what's really nice is if you're in Pine Road, the bulletin boards right off the main office hallway, you can actually see some student artifacts answering some of those questions, so it's really nice to see. And lastly, I continue the theme of weather not cooperating for MLK celebrations. However, we were able to pivot pretty successfully at Pine Road. We did obviously have some weather interruptions. However, in some ways, the team was able to pivot and kind of make it an even more impactful event. We pushed the activities into the general education classrooms. So what we were able to do was actually have over 300 students participate in the projects. And some of the things that we accomplished were a cleanup of Pine Road. So that actually the afternoon of MLK Day, we had about 16 volunteers come and finish the cleanup of Pine Road. We provided 200 breakfast bags for Caring for Friends. 10 boxes of hygiene materials were donated to Face to Face in Germantown. 200 placemats and hot chocolate cards were created for residents at St. Joseph's Manor, as well as hundreds of Valentine's Day made and mailed to veterans in our area, and again, as well as trash being picked up around the school. Very thankful for those that volunteered to help, especially the 16 people that came in the afternoon of the storm to help us clean up the school and put away all of the materials that we placed out in the cafeteria in preparation for Monday. So a lot of good work happened, and really recognizing Dr. King's legacy of promoting social change through positive community action. If there's any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Thank you, principals, for your update. Takes us to building and grounds, and there is an application for the local Girl Scout troop here in Huntington Valley, and this is for it is that time of year, cookie sale, and which will be, the proposal is here to be hosted during some of the HVA basketball events. So it would be permission for them to use the facilities. And that takes us down, Mr. McGuinn, to your payable checklist.
Yeah, we have the checklist dated 1/25 in the amount shown. If there's any questions, please let me know.
Mr. McGuinn, are we going to start seeing, I think we're starting to see it, like checks being paid to the builders, the contractors, so the checklist is looking like a lot bigger than we're used to seeing.
Yeah, you're going to see some bigger numbers. They're always going to be generated with the account code that starts with 31, which is our bond fund. But yes, you'll start to see some significant payments to contractors. And all payments are vetted through not only the architect, but also Mr. Lynch's office to ensure that we have all the documentation behind all those payments before anything is sent over to the district for payment.
Okay, thank you.
Under school board, there are a number of field trips you can see listed there, two of which are actually one of which is an overnight, which is our jazz festival. That is still expected to take place. It's an overnight trip. You can see the details there for it. The others include one of which is actually taking place here tomorrow. We originally had named places here in which we're having an all-course day, and that's just to transport our students over from Tamanin, as well as a day trip for our Murray Avenue to go to Tamanin Middle School for a trip. And an overnight trip Hershey Park for our FBLA, and that's an annual state competition for our Future Business Leaders of America. And we do have a number of students competing in those particular events, and it would be an overnight for that.
Dr. David Heiser, I was looking at the Tamanin trip. I know typically we approve overnight or out-of-state trips. Is there a particular reason why this one is on the agenda?
We just decided that in the COVID era of things that we'd like to just make sure that we have these in front of you, that they are transit items and they're going to a different locale to which, you know, we will abide by whatever safety plan we have in play.
And I also notice that it's we're providing transportation to the event, but we're not going to be providing transportation home. And there's no chaperones. Is there somebody going to stay there to make sure all of our children get picked up?
Yeah, absolutely. Ms. Dilks, do you want to share any of that information? Do you have any of those details? Not yet, but yes. Right. Certainly we will make sure that no student is ever left alone, and we'll have the necessary adults there. Under school board, under item B, again, as you did with the Eastern Center for Arts and Technology, there is a membership services budget and a portion of monies and funding that each of the serving school districts pay toward it, and it services various entities and programs that we join with inside the MCIU. And as you heard tonight, there are other opportunities outside of just the MCIU that we can take advantage of as well. We're not locked into it. But there is a standard budget for that. and you can see that on those attached documents. That would need to be something that's approved, and there will be a roll call vote that is necessary at our public meeting for that. Are there any other correspondences?
No.
None. Okay, well, that takes us down to our public comment section. And I'd just like to remind our community that for purposes of public comment and questions this evening, all public speakers are asked to state their first and last name prior to addressing the board. A 3-minute time period will be allotted for individual comments. Individuals may not yield their time to another speaker. All comments will be directed to the board as a whole or to the presiding officer. No comments or questions shall be directed to the individual board members or district administrators when applicable. Responses to questions asked during public discussion will be answered. All public comments and responses must be in the spirit of civil public discourse. Abusive or profane language will not be tolerated. Please be aware all comments are being recorded, and the board thanks the public in advance for its cooperation. So we have the podium and the microphone set up on that side. And we have listed for public comment this evening. Our first speaker is Fred Green. And Mr. Green, I'd ask that you put a face mask on, please. Thank you. I believe we will if you would speak into the microphone. Thank you.
Can you hear me? All right, great. So I'm class of 1979, Lower Moreland. I think Dr. Cohen was on the school board back then. It's been a while. I know Berardi. I know Geiger. Our families had businesses close together. But one of the major discussions here is health and safety. Pine Road School, I'm going to use that as an example. I live across the street from Pine Road. It's the house I was born in, basically. I moved away for a while and came back. There's not a house in Lower Moreland that's been more impacted by by Pine Road being enlarged. The traffic situation is appalling. Now, Geiger was there on Halloween, on the Halloween parade, and it's a mess out there with cars parked in different directions, backwards, forward, buses come flying through. Now, the police are there, but they're more worried about speeders and things like that. It's how people park to walk their kids over to the schoolyard, and it's just totally out of control. I believe about 10, 12 years ago, one of the schools above Happer or out that way, a kid walking to school got hit by a car and killed. So you guys spend all this money on that school, and somebody brought up the cut through from off of Red Lion Road up to Buck Road, worried about traffic being cut through, but no one brings up people cutting through Andrew Road to avoid the intersections and so forth. All you have to do is come and stand there and watch it. It's a disaster in the making. Somebody's going to get hurt. So this is the safety issue that I'm talking about. And I urge you all to take a look at it because it's real. Nobody's brought it up. I live there. I see it. And one of these days, something's going to happen out there. I don't think it's going to cost you a lot of money. I don't know who's supposed to take charge with this. But Pine and Andrew, there is a police presence there, but there's so much going on, they only can do so much and handle it. Pine and Andrew, I urge you to take a look at that. Which brings me to Pine Road. Okay, my son is a junior. We're almost done. I can't wait to be done with school and move on to other things. However, I'm here for the parents that have small children and who are impacted with the mask mandates. Little kids are shy. Most of them are shy to begin with, and they're losing a couple years of growth and development. Now, we don't know what the implications are going to be way down the road. But this mask stuff covering up your face, it's someone, Berardi brought up some reasonable arguments, and thank God there's some reasonable people here. But this is crazy. This has become political, one side versus the other side, and that's what it's really about.
Mr. Green, if you can finish up your 3 minutes.
Yeah, okay, well, I got good stuff here. Okay, like the Pine and Andrew, someone's going to get hurt. So I'm getting into what the problem is. We should be worried about our kids and not who's going to wear a mask and who's not going to wear a mask and their development. And that's what I have to say about that. Do you have any questions for me about that intersection problem?
You said that the police are out there regularly. We have the
Yeah, you were there.
Yeah.
You saw it.
Right. The crossing guard situation. So we're in.
No, it's not a crossing guard.
No, that area is not, but.
It's a disaster in the making. And I urge you all, if you all want to do something in a bipartisan or in an agreeable manner, this is one for you guys. It needs to be, no one has ever addressed this. I know, I live there.
I'll speak with the chief tomorrow about it.
Okay, let's get something done about it because it's a disaster in the making. Any questions for me?
Yeah, Mr. Green, I have a question. And being that you're there every day, is there anything you would suggest doing that you think could work?
Thank you for that. Probably the simplest thing is to take one side of the road out where you only can park on one side of the road. Those buses come flying through, one slip of the brake, their foot off the brake, they're jumping the curb, and they could take out a couple people. Happens all the time. It's really bad.
I think what could possibly be done there, that
Pardon
they
me?
have a sign up, no left-hand turn between 3 and 345, because it's usually the traffic that's going north on Pine Road, and when they come out of the school, and if you can't make a left on Andrew, that keeps the traffic away.
Well, anything's better than nothing, but a traffic study probably is in order.
I think that's already implemented, no left turn in arrival and
We have that
dismissal.
signage currently.
Maybe at the school, but not in front of my house.
Yeah, I think the other thing, and I don't know that it's going to really make a big difference, and it's a couple years away, but when the high school is completed, the plan is to bring fifth grade up to Murray Avenue. So I'm hoping that alleviates the amount of students going, which will make traffic a little less. It may not fix the problem, but it might be a little bit of a relief to that issue. But that's a couple years away.
Well, God forbid someone gets hurt in the meantime. Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Colleen Collins. Colleen, you're welcome to use that one if either is fine.
Good evening. My name is Colleen Collins, and I have 4 kids in the district, 2 daughters in Pine Road, a son at Murray Avenue, and a son in the high school. My boys are here tonight. I want to speak tonight and ask that the health and safety plan be revised to make masks optional. There are parents in this district, including myself and my husband, who would like the choice on whether their child should be donning a mask. While I understand the need for the health and safety of all children, I want to express the need for choice to keep all kids healthy, not just physically, but mentally as well. As a parent of a child with an inoperable brain tumor who's sitting right over there, and a less than optimal immune system, I feel that his and my other children's mental health is more in jeopardy than being exposed to COVID variants, other flu-like viruses, and even the common cold. As his oncologist at CHOP has drilled in our heads, masks are hindering the immune system of children and causing immunity debt. Not being exposed to any germs due to masks is actually causing more harm than good. I personally want my children to breathe, I want my kids to have a healthy immune system, and I want the choice. Prolonged mask wearing has generated adverse behaviors and anxiety in some children in the district. As an example, I have received concerns and complaints from my daughter's first grade teacher because she's going to the bathroom too frequently. After ruling out a medical condition, her pediatrician told me this is anxiety-ridden behavior. When we asked my daughter why she's going to the bathroom this much, she says she goes into the bathroom stall, locks the door, sits on the toilet, and pulls down her mask to breathe. She is not going to the bathroom. Let me repeat that. My 6-year-old is going into the bathroom stall, locking the door, sitting on the toilet, and pulls her mask down to breathe. This is not how life should be for children at any age in any school. My kindergarten student comes out at the end of the day with raw thumbs. She is literally picking the skin off of her thumbs, a behavior that is only occurring at school. She tells us that sometimes she cannot breathe good or hear what her teacher is saying, and that makes her feel nervous in her belly, and she begins to pick her skin. When she asks for a mask break, sometimes she is told no, but after persistence, she is told to stand at her cubby so she can take her mask down. To a 5-year-old, this can be interpreted as punishment. Again, after medical advice from her doctor at Tri-County Pediatrics, he told me this is anxiety behavior and is seeing this in half of his patients. What is even more disturbing is 2 weeks ago, my first grader's encore teacher tried to double mask her because her mask was slipping below her nose. When my husband emailed the teacher told us that she offered my daughter another mask to put under the mask she already had on.
Mrs. Collins, if you can wrap it up, please.
Sure. Her reasoning was she didn't want my daughter to bring illness home to any other kid. If I ask all 3 kids in the schools what they're learning, all they tell me is that they're told to pull up their mask over and over and over again. This is not okay. These are our children. They're not getting this time back. We are parents. We've had enough. We want what is best and safe for our kids. Please give the parents who want the mask option a choice. Let our kids breathe. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Danilo Diaz.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. I wanted to make a comment before my prepared statement. As you guys are debating about policies and what to do, I will urge you, if you want to keep the trust of the community, that you be very careful with the information that you share to make sure that it's actually factual. There's been several information even today about the effectiveness of masks that it's been proven wrong for a long time. It is, and you can look at the studies are there. You have the studies because they have been sent to you by members of this community, and you just don't respond to them. So please, we want to be able to trust you. So when you say things like vaccinated people don't spread COVID, that has been disproven by the CDC many months ago. So how can I trust that everything else that you're saying is true when I cannot trust you with something as basic as that? For many, just to kind of recap why we're so frustrated, you close our schools and move to asynchronous when other districts were offering synchronous. You limit comments. You actually close comments for many months in violation of the Sunshine Act. Right? You did that because you didn't want to hear people's whine. That is on email. That's a fact. Then you moved us to open up the schools, and unfortunately had to move to hybrid. You bring in an expert from SHOP who tells you that the risk of continuing to close the schools is greater than to open them up. And you refuse to listen to that information and still voted to keep the schools closed. That happened. That happened. I'm more than happy to stay later and share you the details. Then finally, when we get ready to open up to remove masks, You had the information about the safety plan that was very well prepared by the administration. It was very detailed. I think Michael's the only one who actually has read it because he's the one who can actually quote it. But it was very detailed. You had it in front of you 2 weeks before, because I had it. It was public information. And then when you came to vote, you changed the plan. You changed the metrics. At one point, the person who made the motion to change the metric was going to vote no against his own motion. That's also on video, right? So this is all crazy, and we're trying to figure out like why is it? So here's what I think, right? You don't have to share the burden. Most of you, 5 of you, don't have kids on the district, so you don't have to share the burden to wake up in the middle of the night to check on your kids because their personality has changed or something, and you're afraid for them. So you want to make sure they're okay. You don't know how it feels to try to call a specialist, a therapist, to take care of your kids, and not being able to find one for 3 months because everyone is doing the same. You don't have to share that burden. You don't know what it is to see your kids struggle socially, anxiety, academically, where before they didn't have that problem. You don't have to carry that burden. So what I'm asking you, respectfully, step aside. Let other people carry that burden, right? Let us handle that. It's extremely frustrating to see you guys just not even understanding the plan, the health plan.
Mr. Diaz, if you can wrap it up, please.
Yes, thank you. So one thing that I will ask, because I don't think it's been asked in any of this meeting, have you asked us the impact that your policies is having on our families? I'm here. We're here. Ask us. I got 3 minutes, which is over. Ask me. You have the power. You have time. Ask me. How is this impacting my family?
Thank you, Mr. Diaz.
Any questions?
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Lana Rober.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lana Rober. I have currently total 3 kids already. 1 graduated. Currently, I have 2 kids in school. 1 is junior, and my other one's 4th grader. She will speak today as well for kids and what they're seeing at school. Her name is Ella Rober. Come on. Can you go down a little bit?
Hi. When I at school, when we're in the class, my teacher makes us go in the hall to drink water, and we're not allowed to do it while she's teaching. And we're not allowed to see our friends when we have indoor recess, and we get yelled at to pull our mask up. And when I wear my mask, I feel nauseous and I can't breathe. And I don't want to get yelled at to put my mask up. When I wear my mask, my head hurts and my eyes start getting teary and my stomach hurts and I can't breathe. I want to see my friends at recess. I don't know what that's okay.
All right. All right, thank you. And what I want to say, there's a few things happened to my kids because we really want an option for our kids to the optional masks. I'm not trying to force everyone who's not believing and whatever. Kids want to take, my kids especially, they want to take masks off. We want this option. What happened to my junior in a high school. He was called, about a month ago, he was called to vice principal office. During the class, when he was in a class in front of everyone, probably he thought he got in trouble. When he went to the office, the vice principal was questioning him. The bus driver complained about my son pulling his mask off his nose on a bus. I don't know what happened. They never investigated anyone. No one even say sorry. But my son is not using the bus. So in front of everyone, he was really frustrated. And this has happened to so many kids in school. Also with the little ones. They got yelled. They can't drink water in the classrooms. It's not all the teachers. But for some reason, after the holidays, something changed. They were able to pull their mask and drink the water if they want. Now they can't. They have to go to the hallway to drink the water. Why? It's a new policy in the school, in Pine Road especially, and they can't stand up with themselves. So I don't know if you have anything new, if it's something in the policy, but again, I want to mention it's not in every class. She has switched classes. One teacher allowed to drink water, other not.
Ms.
So,
Rober, if you can finish up, please.
Yes, sure. And the main point is, please, again, we asking respectfully, give us an option. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Heather Soros.
Good evening. My name is Heather Soros. I've come here tonight to speak to you as a parent of an immune-compromised child. My family has been living life like there is a pandemic going on for the past 11 years now, because one of our children has lung disease, a previous heart condition, and other medical health concerns. Any virus or cold could have killed her in her earlier years. I do not exaggerate on this. And this is a frightening place for parents to be in. As you can imagine, there are daily and seasonal precautions that our family takes. Mask wearing is not one of them. As scary as it may be to expose your immune-compromised child to the world, we recognize that it is the best way to build her long-term immunity and give her the best shot of becoming a healthy adult. The viruses that kids get today become their immunity of tomorrow. In the past 2 years, there has been a continuous conversation about what children are being exposed to, with questions like, were you exposed to the virus? How long were you exposed to the virus? Were you wearing a mask and distancing to limit your exposure? I invite you to reverse your thinking on the topic of exposure and ask yourselves, what have our children not been exposed to in the past 2 years? They have not been exposed to a thriving social, emotional, mental, and physical school environment. Yes, children are resilient, but you have to ask yourselves, how will prolonged masking and distancing affect them long term? I have to also point out that their active learning is constantly interrupted by teachers saying, pull your mask up, and we can't continue until all masks are on properly. And how about, your mask protects me, my mask protects you, which is an opinion. There's a lot of diverse opinions on that subject. There are so many parents like myself who have been patient and respectful with the masking decisions thus far, even though we do not feel it is the best choice for our children. For me, I see masks as being germ catchers, and wearing them for a prolonged period of time can expose you to viruses, bacteria, increased CO2, and so much more. There is plenty of data to support my thoughts. Mask wearing is not the healthiest option for many students. Where is the concern for students like my daughter, who express that mask wearing sometimes makes it hard for her to breathe? Where's the concern for students who are trying to learn phonics with masks tight around their jaws? And we all know that smiling is contagious. The warmth of another person's smile can positively alter the emotional state of someone who is feeling down. How many of our students are walking through the school feeling depressed under those masks? I think a lot. They sure could use some smiles beaming at them. I teach my children that you cannot make a complaint just a complaint. You must offer a suggestion or a solution. My suggestion to you is that you make masks optional now that every family has the opportunity to get a COVID vaccine if they see fit to do so. In addition, I suggest that you provide resources to educate families on how to combat this virus when they face it in their own homes.
Mrs. Soros, if you can wrap it up, please.
Almost there. And I don't mean by simply providing a link to the CDC's website. How about partnering with a local nutritionist or holistic practitioner who could speak to our community about the natural ways to boost immunity with reference to COVID? Could we also put further focus on keeping student restrooms sanitary and in working order? I have students in 2 of our schools, all of which come home and tell me about the poor restroom conditions. Another point I'd like to add in response to the board's discussion about losing our supply of tests if we go to mask optional. It seems logical to think that the district could use their ESSER grant money to purchase tests or simply just send sick kids home, as we used to do,
Mrs. Soros, if you can.
and leave the rest up to the families. In conclusion, our parents deserve and have the right to make decisions about our children's health in all aspects of life. Many of us do not agree that mask wearing is a healthy choice for our children. It is time to make masks optional. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker is Lauren Gershman.
Good evening. My name is Lauren Gershman, and I have 2 children in 1st and 4th grade at Pine Road. I brought with me tonight my 1st grader's masks that he wore today to school. I don't know if you can see this, but it's covered in Cheeto dust. Also, every single day when he comes out of school, despite being covered in food, they're also soaking wet because he sucks on them. I thought an easy solution to this would be to just send him more masks. So here's the 2nd mask that he wore today, also covered in dust from his Cheetos. He's really into those this week. Sorry, I'm terrible at public speaking. So I told him to make sure to change his masks, but they're still dirty. I'm not sure if any of you have ever worn a wet mask, but if you have, you know that it's a really uncomfortable situation. When I see the condition of his masks at pickup each day, I feel so sad because I know that he is too afraid to take them off. And I wonder how all these adults can look at him in this disgusting wet mask and think that it's acceptable for a 6-year-old to walk around like that. As I mentioned, I also have a child in 4th grade, and I think everybody knows the rule that was implemented in 4th grade, or if you don't, they're now not allowed to drink water in class anymore, so they have to go out into the hallway. Aside from this being a distraction and missed class time, my daughter has expressed to me that she feels uncomfortable. I guess she's like a little shy, and she doesn't want to ask to leave class for a drink. So I tried to come up with a solution for her by giving her a straw to bring to class. I showed her how to put it under her mask, keep her nose and mouth covered, and sip her water without bothering anyone. When she did this, she was told that's not allowed. She must go into the hallway. So now most days she comes home with a mostly full water bottle. She feels it's just not worth the trouble, and I don't really blame her. However, she's a very active child. We go to sports 3 to 5 nights a week, depending on the time of the year, and she really should be drinking water during the day. I understand that masks have the potential to lower the rate of transmission in certain situations, and I'm aware of the huge surge in cases that we've had recently. I understand that the school is a community and that the safety and health of everyone is, as it should be, a top priority. So with that said, I feel that we've reached a point where the current variants seem to be less virulent. the death rate has remained extremely low. In fact, it's non-existent for people under the age of 20 in Montgomery County. All students have easy access to vaccines, and it's very likely that the cases will only continue to decline as we head into the spring and summer months. So I ask you, are masks really what is keeping our children healthy and safe? Is drinking significantly less water during the day and breathing through a spit-soaked and crumb-covered mask better for my children than them being potentially exposed to the Omicron variant? Despite both my kids already having and recovered from COVID? I would say it's not.
Mrs. Gershman, if you can finish up, please.
Sure. Please lift the mask mandate in our schools and let parents choose what is best for their kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jen Zalewski.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jen Zaleski. I have 3 students here at Lower Moreland. It was always my dream for my kids to grow up in Lower Moreland. My first daughter is now a senior. She started here in kindergarten. And for me, this school started as a parent first and foremost, and almost immediately then a volunteer, a lifelong PTA member, a committee member, a substitute teacher, a coach. Clearly, I think anyone who knows me knows that the school and the community is as important to me as my own children are. I'm having a real hard time watching my kids struggle and suffer right now with being stuck behind a mask and asking, you know, if you had the option tomorrow to not wear your mask, would you wear it or would you not? One says, no, I wouldn't. The other one said, I would. I said, why? She said, because I don't want people to see my face anyway. Well, why wouldn't you want people to see your face? She said, well, it's the way it's been. It's the way it's been for the past 2 years. These kids, I just heard someone else say, and it's so true in high school, so many kids feel left out, not part of the crew, not part of the club. Getting a smile in the hallway by someone, let's say, that's pretty or good looking or popular, that might not get it otherwise when they're in a group of their friends, but they get it from a stranger walking down the hallway, can change someone's day, their week, their month, make them feel worthy, make them feel important and special. That's not happening. Kids have no reason to make eye contact with each other in a hallway because you can't see if I'm smiling at you or not. I think we're beyond people telling us to wear masks. I know most kids leave this building and get into the cars together and they don't have their masks on. They're going out to dinner together. They're spending the weekends together. I know that you're in a difficult position, but I also think that parents need to make choices for their own families and that you should trust us to do that. I know that probably the best years of my life were my school years. My safe haven during my elementary school years was my school. Do these kids feel safe coming to school? I don't know anymore. So if they don't feel safe at home, now they don't feel safe at school. I just think that's something that everyone really needs to consider because our kids are growing up much differently than I did. And again, I feel like these are probably the best years of their life. The easiest, should be the easiest, the most fun. I appreciate you listening to me, and I hope you'll consider giving us families the choice to mask or not mask our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kim Rudick.
Sorry. Good evening. My name is Kim, and I am a parent of a 3rd grader at Pine Road Elementary. Initially tonight, when I decided to speak, I had planned to talk about the numbers we are seeing in surrounding school districts, such as Bucks County, that have chosen to go with mask optional, but I decided against that. I feel like any one of you can look up these numbers and clearly see that their positive case counts are not only similar to ours, but they're actually, in fact, slightly lower. And it's very telling, I think, to see the efficiency of mask wearing by children. And I encourage everyone, especially members of the board, to take a look, maybe Google this. and see what you can find, because it's kind of interesting when you look at like Pennsbury, Central Bucks. I've looked up all of them, and their numbers are coming down, definitely. Actually, they're better than what we're at right now, being masked. So with that being said, I decided to speak to you just from my heart, but also from a place that has become extremely frustrating. Initially, I planned to say to you, can you tell us when the end game is? What number do we need to be at? Do we need to have 0 cases? I think you've already discussed that, so I'm not even, planning on going there. But I do think that when I look at the numbers that you're looking at, even at a higher level, I don't foresee us getting there. I just don't. COVID's not going away. It's not going anywhere, actually, and I think that we just need to learn more to live with it than to be in fear of this virus that is not killing children. It's not anymore. And initially when COVID, hit us, it was extremely deadly and it was scary and it was all those things, and it's just not that anymore. So with that being said, I just kind of wanted to know, like, in your eyes, like, where do you think it's going to be a parent's decision to decide what we do for our children? And where are we going to consider their mental health as well as their physical? And we have doctors on the board, and I think that as a physician, you could say that mental health is just as important as physical health. But I just don't see that really being dealt with in our district, and I find that concerning. My family spent the last 2 years complying with these rules that respectfully don't seem to be following any type of logical science, and they literally change on a daily basis according to the guidelines, where the goalposts are constantly being moved. There's no consistency whatsoever. My son, he's 8 years old. He has spent 20% of his life keeping others safe. And let me repeat that. 20% of his life on earth. This is what he's done. Keep others safe, wear a mask, worry about every germ out there. Faces are bad. This is what he's being taught. And I find it truly sad. He's in the 3rd grade, and he hasn't had a normal school year since kindergarten. My son did his part. He did exactly what he was told. So back to my original question, what is the end game? And as I said, I just don't think that realistically we're going to get there. And when is someone going to step up and do their part for the children who are suffering with mental health issues from these policies?
Mrs. Ruth, if you can finish up, please.
All right, 2 more sentences. When do we stop sacrificing one child for another? And ask yourself, who's going to carry that burden when it inevitably gets to that point? I ask that you please consider giving all families a mask option in order to accommodate the health needs of every student before it's too late. And thank you for listening.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jillian Calder.
Hello, good evening. Thank you again for the opportunity to address you. My name is Jillian Calder, and I'm the parent of 3 children in Lower Moreland schools. I'd like to put ourselves back to the summer of 2020 when we wanted nothing more than to get our children back in school. We wanted them to have some normalcy, we wanted in-person learning for them, and we worked together to create a health and safety plan to do that. In that first health and safety plan, the goal was to get them back in school and to get them normalcy. We told our children, you need to be protected and you need to protect others. So here's a mask. And we taught them, my mask protects you, your mask protects me. Unbeknownst to us at the time, we seemingly gave away any right we have to choose what is best when it comes to educating our children. We agreed to send our children to school under conditions that were anything but normal, and in doing so, we took away so much. And that has continued for far too long. For the sake of normalcy and protecting others, we unknowingly agreed to take away some of the best memories that are made in their high school years, strengthening bonds they've had since Pine Road, school dances, preparing for college, and enjoying the last years of normal high school before becoming adults. For the sake of normalcy and protecting others, We unknowingly agreed to take away their middle school years, making connections with new faces and old, laughing and smiling around their lockers, and socializing during their lunch period with a table full of friends. I don't know if you know this, but most children in Lower Moreland are eating lunch with one other person, and that's it. And if that child's being contact traced, they're gone for at least 5 days, which means some of our children are eating lunch by themselves for a week at a time, the only time that they can socialize freely. For the sake of normalcy and protecting others, we unknowingly agreed to take away their elementary years, learning basic reading and math skills, proper speech development, the opportunity to looking to an adult for some sense of reassurance when school feels hard and they just need a smile or a hug to get them through the day. We wore masks to protect those who needed protecting. But who is protecting those who need the most protection now? We are. These parents of Lower Moreland that you see before you, these are the people who are asking the same things that we've been asking for since the beginning of this mess. These are the people who have been emailing you and begging you to do something. These are the people who are begging the county to do something. These are the same people who are frustrated every time we hear our school board say, and not all of you, I agree, but when we hear you say, I'm just not comfortable making masks optional. Well, forgive me, but I'm just not comfortable with you playing games with our children anymore. The parents you see here tonight are the people who are stepping up to protect these children now. We will continue to show up, stand up, and speak up for these kids until you give them the option to be educated without a mask. We want our kids in school learning, thriving, happy, and smiling. We want our kids to have the option to be in school without masks. Give them the option to have their faces back. Let's start correcting the mistakes we've all made. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jennifer Berman.
Good evening, board members. My name is Jen Berman, and I have 2 boys at Murray Ave. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I would like to address my concerns regarding mandated masking of students. I would like for you to consider changing the health and safety plan to address the mental, physical, and emotional health of students more appropriately. My children are suffering from wearing masks all day, every day. They cannot breathe, they cannot concentrate, and being new to the district, they do not even know the faces of many of their classmates. Let me reiterate that. My children said they don't even know what their classmates look like. I want to reiterate some of the stats that were discussed tonight by the board. From what I understand now, in Lower Moreland, masking is mandated during levels of substantial and high community transmission. Substantial transmission is defined by 50 or more cases for every 100,000 people of COVID in all of Lower Moreland. The issue is that Lower Moreland only has approximately 14,000 people, with the school district making up about 20% of that. Therefore, substantial levels of transmission means that if we go above 1.37 students in the district at any given time, we are required by our current health and safety plan to mandate masks in schools. 1.37 people. That basically means that only 2 people can be diagnosed with COVID and the entire district is required to be masked. Even discussed tonight was changing it to the high level of transmission for 100 out of 100,000 people. That only changes it to 3 people in the district at any given time having COVID. COVID is becoming endemic like the flu. There is no way that that these numbers will ever be met. With our current Mask to Stay program, any child exposed, regardless of vaccine status, is permitted to remain in school if asymptomatic, with testing performed on designated days. And those students that are seen as possible risk are also required to be masked during that time. Essentially, with the program, we are protecting our population with these measures and guidelines, with or without masks. If a child is symptomatic, it is the parent's obligation to keep them home. I'm asking you here today to continue to encourage the Montgomery County Office of Public Health to look at their metrics and to recategorize masking guidance, since schools also provide other layers of mitigation strategies that frankly the rest of society doesn't provide, such as spacing, specialized airflow with MERV 13 filters, and continued emphasis on hand washing and other hygiene practices. In addition, now, all students in this district have the option of being vaccinated. Kids are socializing, playing sports, going to activities, and resuming a normal life, many of them mask-free within the community. Those families that are more vulnerable are truly the ones that need to take the extra level of protection, such as continued masking, to protect themselves, and they should have that option. Each family truly should have the right to choose what is best for their children in school, just like we have the option to in all other areas of society. We cannot continue to pick and choose between children's physical, mental, and emotional well-being. They all affect each other. I'm not asking you to remove masks from the district. I'm simply asking you to vote, to hand that choice over to the parents. Please give us parents a choice and let our children breathe. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mike Hoke.
I should have went first because I am going to be boring compared to everyone else. So I'm a numbers guy, and I know that someone said that we should trust that you know the numbers, but unfortunately in watching some board meetings, we couldn't even understand that a half a person doesn't exist for a metric. So I'm going to explain some numbers. First thing first, roughly 14,000 people in Lower Moreland. Currently 516.09 per 100K cases. That means we have about 72 cases in this area right now. To get down out of low, we would need to reduce 59 of those cases. So we would have to get to 13 cases in this township to get out of that high area, just at a high. That's 72 people, with Omicron being as transmissible it is, likely mostly all in similar households. That 72 people equates to 18 houses in our 90 miles of streets in this township. Hospitals, I hear constantly, we don't want to tax the hospitals. We don't want to tax the hospitals. Currently, Montgomery County, oh, by the way, all information I'm sharing is from Monco dashboard, Bucks dashboard, or PA dashboard. I can share the links with the board. I believe you have my email from when I corrected these last week. So just email me and I'll give you these links. In Monco, 433 vents available, 130 in use, only 23 of those for COVID patients. 297 COVID hospitalizations. Important to note with that number, that does not mean 297 people came in with COVID. They may have broken their leg, came in for a cast, tested positive. That 297, the CDC estimates that only 40% of hospitalizations are actually people who came in for COVID. The other 60%, people who broke a leg, people with cancer, God forbid, something else, and during their intake tested positive. There's 655 beds in Abington Hospital. There's not even enough COVID patients to fill Abington Hospital, let alone all the other hospitals in our township. So if your concern is filling the hospitals, we're good, okay? I'm gonna double down on that. I'll even add Bucks into the mix, okay? Because I know we don't want to compare ourselves to Bucks, but we can learn from Bucks. Bucks has 163 people in. 61 of them are vaxxed, important to note too. So it's not just the unvaxxed out there. I know I'm short on my time, so I want to get the most important stats. Deaths, because we say we don't, one is too much, right? And I agree. In all of Montgomery County, the youngest person to die was 17, and that's terrible. The next youngest was 25, 26, and then 7 people between 30 and 40. So all told, in all of Montgomery County, only 10 people younger than 40 have passed. Only 1 school age, but 9 have committed suicide. So my question to the board is, why 1 is too much? What about those 9 that committed suicide? Because a Zoom meeting or a temp counselor ain't gonna solve that problem. So at some point, you have to start thinking about those 9. Those 9 aren't. And my final thing, my final clarification before, because I know my time is, I was running a timer here. 2 board meetings ago, it was alleged when discussing the extracurriculars that wrestlers are exchanging saliva. I'm not sure what the board thinks is going on in wrestling, but I can, after my research, because I was not a wrestler, I can confirm that wrestlers are not exchanging saliva and that it's a safe activity. So thank you for your time, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Elizabeth Colavita.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to just apologize for pulling my mask a little low. Otherwise, it fogs my glasses and I can't read what I'm going to say. My name is Liz Colavita, and I have third grade twins who used to attend Pine Road School but no longer do because last year my son had repetitive staph infections and bacterial infections around his mouth and has a condition where he overheats easily and hives in his own sweat, which made the mask a constant moist environment for him. And that led to the staph infections. However, I was told that staph was treatable and refused a mask exemption despite the suffering my son endured. And so I'm here tonight because I've had so many other families reach out to me because I've shared my story openly with the public. And I just want you guys to know that the problems that these kids are having, they're afraid to come in. The parents are afraid to come in. They're afraid of backlash from the teachers on their children. They're afraid of speaking out and putting a focus on their own kids. So that's why I'm here. These children are suffering with significant childhood anxiety, germophobia, depression, and eating disorders. This one-size-fits-all masking policy hasn't worked for everyone. Even if you happen to be in favor of mask mandates and not at all bothered by mask wearing, that does not make the profoundly distressing experience of someone else any less real. Childhood is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. We cannot recover this time for them. Acknowledging that things other than COVID exist is not the same as pretending that COVID doesn't exist, okay? Eating disorders are up 120%. Calls to the Cleveland Clinic Pediatric Psychiatric Department are 3 times the volume. Suicide in teen girls is up 51%. Conversely, COVID death and serious hospitalization in children is now comparable to the flu per the CDC. We don't have a pandemic of COVID in kids. Even the Academy of Pediatrics has called it a mental health state of emergency for kids. Parents whose children have suffered from the mask are only asking for choice. They're not asking for you to take masking away. We're just asking the mandatory part to be dropped. I will continue to show up to every board meeting and make my voice heard on behalf of children suffering in our district until there is positive change for these children. After all, childhood is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and forced masking of children will go down in history as one of the most cruel and inhumane things ever done. At a certain point, our kids will want to know who did this to them and why, and it's not going to be pretty. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is, pardon my apologies if I mispronounce, Nurit Nassimi.
Good evening, everyone. I moved here a few years ago for Lower Moreland. Thank you very much. I raised 2 great children. Thanks to you, hopefully thanks to the district and other parents with their children. I came here just to say that my son said to me the other day that he feels like the teachers look at him like he's diseased, like the students are diseased. I was upset when he said it. Today when I came into the meeting and heard the rest of the parents, I even got more upset. Even way worse stories. And I just wanted to point out, when we first started COVID a few years back, we were all terrified. We didn't leave our houses. We didn't go shopping. We definitely didn't go to restaurants. We were terrified for our life. We were afraid to die. I think all of us the first 3 months. 2 years later, there is so much more that we know. We don't know everything, but there is so much. How many of us today go to restaurants and choose to take our mask off? A friend of other tables, in front of friends, in front of other children, in front of wait staff. We just take it off. How many of us? I think most of us go to restaurants today. If we can choose to take our mask off as an adult, I definitely think that our kids and the parents should be allowed to take our children's mask off. It's not a way to raise a child. I am speechless of what these kids have to go through at this age, at any age. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you. Our last speaker, who had to leave for a family emergency, asked if I could share the public comment with the community and with the board. Her name is Serena Nguyen, and today is the first, her comments are that today is the first day of Lunar New Year for my Vietnamese American family and many others. Other East, Southeast Asian, and Asian American families. This is a very special time. It is a time of reflection, hope, togetherness, and celebration. I thought it would be nice to share some ways my family celebrates Thut with each, and I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, with each of you on this special day so you can celebrate if you would like to as well. For us, the New Year is a touchstone in time. We reflect on how we felt last year and what we hope for this new one, not just for ourselves, but for the rest of the world. There are so many fun ways that family welcomes the new year into our home. We clean everything and make sure to throw all the trash out before midnight. The bad juju, spirits, vibes get thrown out with the trash. Also, before midnight, we set a table near our home entrance and dress it with fresh fruits, flowers, treats, sweets, a cup of fresh hot tea, and 3 sticks of incense. At midnight, we open the entrance door to let the new year in. We stay together until the last of the incense burns out and reflect in mostly silence together. For the first 3 days of the new year, we are on our best behavior. We try to only speak positive words and do kind things because this will set the tone for the rest of the year. Each first that happens once in the new year is particularly auspicious. The first person who enters your home in the new year will have great luck. For example, for the first transaction a business has will foretell its success, and so on. The most important tradition to my family is exchanging blessings for the new year. We go in age order, starting with the oldest family unit of the oldest generation, so my grandparents and my parents, for example. While my grandparents sit, my parents stand before them, arms folded in respect, and offer my grandparents their New Year wishes, good health, longevity, and much happiness from our family. Then my grandparents give my parents their New Year wishes and give them lucky money in red envelopes, although we usually save the envelopes for the kids now. Thank you for taking time to learn about my family and how they celebrate the Lunar New Year. I wish every single one of you good health, success, and happiness. Happy New Year.
Dr. David Heiser, Mrs. Baker, we have an individual who has asked to be added to the public speaking.
Can you come to the microphone and please state your name for us, first and last name?
Hi, my name is Shannon Lindsay.
First name again?
Shannon.
Shannon
Yes.
Lindsay.
Yes. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I came a little late. So, despite my $100,000 law degree, this year I decided to be cafeteria recess aide in another school district because they needed people so bad. And what I want to say to you guys is when you get a chance, visit Pine Road School during lunch period and look inside the masks of the children who are eating. Because what I see every day are masks that are completely filthy, wet, most of them not washed, unfortunately. And this is a very wealthy school district that I work in. They are soaked with saliva. The kids, when they're eating, they spill food in them. It's horrible to see what I see. And I wish that you would come and take a look and see what these kids are putting on their face every day. So, and just to reiterate what everyone's saying, we're just asking for a choice. We're not asking to tell anybody else what to do. We're just asking for choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
David Iser, we have a couple others if the board so chooses to take.
Why don't you step to the microphone? Can you just give us your first name and last name, please?
Oh, sure. Hi. Thank you. My name is Shannon Kozo, and I apologize.
Shannon, can you spell your last name?
Oh, sure. It's Cozzo.
Thank you.
And I apologize. I had to come late. I have one son at swim, another son at basketball, so I just simply could not sign in at 7 o'clock. Hopefully I'm not last because I don't have the most exciting speech. I don't even have a formal speech. I just wanted to kind of state my opinion and kind of more personally how I feel and how it affects my family. I wholeheartedly support choice, okay? I think there's enough data now that, we could leave it up to the parents. I have three sons, 3 students, 2 sixth graders in Murray Avenue, and then I have a 3rd grader at Pine Road. I'm probably going to focus more on my 3rd grader, but generally speaking, all 3 of my kids are very quiet, okay? They're great students, just very quiet. I'm always pushing the social interactions with them. My 3rd grader actually has a formal goal at Pine Road to not only build, but sustain peer interactions, okay? And it's something that the school monitors for him. And it's very difficult, right? And I really feel like if he had the chance to remove his mask, right, the kids may gravitate towards him more, right? They're going to see the smile on his face, right? They're going to see his interactions. And good timing because I actually had a school review with him and his teachers last week. And it's amazing because all of his teachers had said, right, and he does like speech, OT, kind of minor services. I really didn't want to make it too personal, right, because it's kind of my business, really nobody else's. But every one of his teachers has stated how hilarious this kid is, how funny he is, yet he struggles with building and sustaining peer interactions. So my point there is it would be great to see the mask off for him personally. Do you know what I mean? Have him out at recess, have him at school without the mask on, so that his peers, right, when he's cracking his jokes, right, which is what he does best, they can see that you can hear the laughter, but they can not only hear the laughter, they can see his smile, they can see his facial interactions. I really believe that once that happens, kids are going to start gravitating towards him. He's going to start then building and sustaining friendships and having his own little crew that this kid, needs. So that's it, and I appreciate the time, and thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Could I get your first and last name,
yes.
please?
My name is Yuri Robert. You already heard a couple of Roberts. I'll have a few more words. I think for over a year, we were coming and speaking about our kids and the problems, and seems like it doesn't help. I don't think that may be the right approach. Probably what we need to speak about is the board itself. First of all, making the masks optional will make your meetings more pleasant. And we will be understanding you much better. That's the first thing. Another thing, I don't think, we still have elections. So as parents, we need to start to pay more attention. Remember the voting history of each member of the board, and when the time comes, make your choice, make the right choice. The masks mandate, I think it'll pass by itself. Times are changing, so maybe not sooner or later it will pass. Unfortunately, our school will be trailing behind other schools. We won't be proud of it as we were a year ago when our school was probably the first in the area to bring kids back. But so board members and the superintendent need our support. So please remember about the election. And I don't know, I have a feeling that you're hiding behind the statistics and some bureaucratic problems with the county. Problems can be solved. I don't see a real desire or intention to solve them. That's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Could I have your first and last name?
Gavin Flood.
Last name again?
Flood, F-L-O-O-D.
Got it. Thank you.
So I'm a sophomore here at Lower Moreland High School. I haven't had a normal school experience since 7th grade, which is kind of not good. And so I have not had a full high school experience yet. I'm a sophomore, my first 2 years. Last year, we had a hybrid option, 2 days in school, 3 days out of school, which is not good for a student for learning. Most people were not paying attention, and I personally did not learn a single thing last year. This year, it's even harder because the teachers are more worried about your mask than your actual learning. I greet teachers going in the classrooms. I say, "Hi, how are you?" They don't say anything back. They say, "Put your mask up." I have to go in hallways to drink water, which is not, like, I don't want to do that. I should be able to drink water at my desk during class, but I can't. During my American Studies class, my one teacher comes, bangs on my desk, goes, "Put your mask up." Doesn't say anything to me else. Most of our American Studies classes aren't about like what we're learning. It's mostly wear your mask, how is that going to affect yourself? The teachers are not worried about us, they're worried about themselves more, which is not good for a teacher to do. So basically what I'm saying is students should have this choice whether they want to wear a mask or not. Personally, I should not be wearing a mask. It affects me. I get headaches from it every day. Then I have to go swim for 2 hours after that and deal with it there. So basically what I'm saying is this whole thing has become politicized by the teachers, by the school board especially. And thank you. So your decision tonight as school board members is not going to be what we say. It's going to be what your party says, basically. You don't care what we think. We've never had an option to wear what we want to wear. And another thing, I can wear a hat in school. I can't wear a hat in school because I can't be identified. But I can wear a mask that covers 2/3 of my face, and I can still be identified, which makes no sense. So I think, since I'm in the classroom and none of you are, that I should be able to get the choice to wear a mask, and not you have any decide for me. Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.
Mike, I don't know. I have to go back. Joy's going to have to go back on the recording.